Tyson Cox was 42 years old and looked exactly like the kind of man people ignored in Nashville. He drove an old gray Ford F-150, wore dust-covered work boots, and kept a cracked tape measure clipped to his belt. At the grand opening of Juniper Oak, most guests assumed he was part of the cleanup crew. What they didn't know was that Tyson had spent 5 years building that restaurant with his own money, his own hands and loans tied to his own name. Then 2 security guards grabbed his arms at the front entrance while champagne glasses clinked behind him, and Claire Holloway calmly said, "He doesn't belong here anymore. Before we keep going, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there right now." And if you enjoy stories about betrayal, quiet revenge, and men who stay calm under pressure, make sure you subscribe. Tomorrow's story might hit even harder than this one. 5 years earlier, Tyson Cox had no reason to walk into the Franklin Harvest Festival that Saturday afternoon. The October heat still hung over downtown Franklin, even though the leaves had already started turning copper along Main Street. Country music drifted from a temporary stage beside the courthouse. Smoke from barbecue pits rolled through the crowded sidewalks. Families carried lemonade cups and paper trays loaded with fried catfish and hot chicken sliders. Tyson almost left after 10 minutes. He hated crowds, always had. At 42, he preferred job sites to parties and silence to conversation. He had spent most of his adult life building commercial properties across Tennessee and Kentucky. Hotels, medical offices, warehouses. Nothing glamorous. Just concrete steel permits, deadlines, and men yelling over nail guns before sunrise. His clothes still smelled faintly like sawdust from a renovation project in Murfreesboro that morning. He stopped near a white tent because he noticed the line first. About 30 people stood waiting beside a handmade wooden sign that read, "Claire Holloway Southern Fire Kitchen." Tyson watched quietly from the edge of the sidewalk. Inside the tent, a blonde woman moved fast behind a row of cast-iron pans. Mid-30s, sharp cheekbones, white apron tied tight around her waist. She plated shrimp and smoked Gouda grits like someone performing surgery. But it wasn't speed that caught Tyson's attention. It was control. Every movement had purpose. Every plate looked identical. She barely looked down while cooking. At one point, a portable burner failed and the assistant beside her panicked. Claire didn't. She adjusted the flame-shifted pans and kept talking to customers without missing a beat. "Next plate up," she called calmly. Tyson stayed longer than he planned. He finally ordered because the older man behind him in line muttered, "Hell, if people are waiting 40 minutes, this better change my life." Claire overheard him and smirked. "It won't change your life," she said while sliding a plate across the counter, "but you'll think about it tomorrow." The old man laughed. Tyson didn't. He tasted the food standing near a folding table under a maple tree. The shrimp had cayenne heat layered under brown butter. The grits were smooth enough to feel expensive. The bacon jam tasted smoky, sweet, and sharp all at once. It reminded Tyson of restaurants in downtown Chicago he used to visit during construction contracts years earlier. Not festival food, not even clothes. When he looked back toward the tent, Claire was watching him, not smiling, studying. Tyson nodded once toward the plate. "That's good," he said. Most men would have tried harder. Tyson never did. Claire wiped her hands on a towel and stepped around the counter. "You own restaurants?" she asked. "No. You cook, no." "Then why'd you look disappointed after the first bite?" Tyson glanced at the tent around her. "The food's better than the setup." Claire folded her arms. "What's wrong with the setup? The burners are underpowered, your refrigeration table's too small, and your line's too long because the payment station bottlenecks the pickup counter." Claire stared at him for 2 seconds. Most people heard criticism and reacted emotionally. She didn't. Instead, she asked, "What do you do? Construction? What kind commercial mostly?" That answer usually ended conversations. Not this one. Claire tilted her head slightly. "You're the first person here who noticed the refrigeration problem." Tyson shrugged. "It'll slow you down another 20% by dinner rush." Claire looked back toward the equipment instinctively. Tyson could already tell she was calculating solutions in her head. That interested him. Most people liked praise. Claire liked efficiency. 20 minutes later, Tyson was helping her move the prep station 6 feet closer to the serving window while the assistant watched in confusion. Claire laughed once while taping down an extension cord. "You always start reorganizing strangers' businesses on weekends only when they're wasting time. And here I thought you were quiet." "I am." That made her laugh again. By sunset, Tyson was still there. The crowd had doubled. Franklin's downtown lights glowed amber against old brick storefronts. Claire moved through the kitchen line like she owned a real restaurant already. Maybe that was the first thing Tyson admired. She acted like the future already existed. Around 8 o'clock, the festival finally slowed. Claire sat on an upside-down milk crate behind the tent, exhausted. Tyson handed her a bottle of water from a nearby cooler. "You stayed all day," she asked. "You needed another set of hands. You didn't even ask for my number." Tyson looked toward the darkening street. "I figured if you wanted me to have it, you'd offer." Claire smiled slowly. "You always this difficult? No. What are you when you are difficult?" Tyson thought about it for a moment. Busy. For the first time all evening, Claire looked genuinely curious, not flirtatious. Curious. "Tell me something honestly," she said. "What did you really think of the food?" Tyson looked directly at her. "It's too good for festivals." Claire leaned back against the tent pole. "That's the problem." She told him then, not dramatically, not emotionally, just facts. She grew up outside Knoxville. Single mother, cheap apartments, waitressing jobs since high school, culinary school in Louisville on loans she still hadn't paid off, 3 years working under abusive chefs in Atlanta, another 2 in Nashville. Now she wanted her own place. Not a trendy rooftop bar, not influencer food, a real Southern restaurant, heavy oak tables, open kitchen, handmade biscuits every morning, smoked meats overnight, local whiskey shelves. No fake luxury. "I already have the name," she said quietly. Tyson looked over. "What is it, Juniper Oak?" She said it like she could already see the sign hanging above a doorway somewhere. Tyson noticed something then. Claire talked about food differently than she talked about herself. Less polished, more honest. "Do you have investors?" Tyson asked. Claire laughed softly. "I can barely afford this tent." Tyson nodded once. Then he asked the question that changed both their lives. "Have you found a building yet?" Claire studied him carefully. "Why?" "Because I know Nashville's zoning laws better than most lawyers." "That sounds incredibly boring." "It is, but useful. Usually." Claire stood and grabbed her phone from the prep table. "There's an old property near Germantown," she said. "Used to be a printing warehouse. Brick exterior. Owner wants too much for it." Tyson looked at the photo she pulled up. The building looked half dead. Broken side windows, rust stains beneath gutters, collapsing rear loading dock. But Tyson saw different things. Load-bearing walls, ceiling height, ventilation possibilities, parking access, potential. Claire watched his eyes scanning the image. "You're already redesigning it in your head, aren't you?" "A little. You haven't even seen the inside. Don't need to." Claire stared at him for a second longer than necessary. Then she smiled. Not the polished smile she used on customers. A smaller one. Private. "Come see it with me tomorrow," she said. Tyson should have said no. He had projects waiting Monday morning, payroll reports unfinished, subcontractors expecting calls. Instead, he looked once more at the broken warehouse photo, then at Claire. "All right," he said. The next afternoon, Tyson stood inside the abandoned Germantown building while dust drifted through broken skylights 40 feet overhead. The place smelled like wet brick and machine oil. Water stains spread across cracked concrete floors. Part of the ceiling had collapsed near the back hallway. Old printing equipment still sat rusting against one wall. Claire stood beside him in silence. Most people would have seen ruin. Tyson watched her staring into the empty space and realized she saw a future instead. Then Claire spoke softly into the darkness. One day, she said, people are going to wait months to eat here. Tyson looked around the dead warehouse one more time, and for the first time in years, he believed someone. The first 6 months nearly destroyed Tyson Cox financially. The Germantown warehouse looked romantic in sunset light and impossible in daylight. The roof leaked in 17 places. Half the electrical system still used wiring from the late 1970s. The basement flooded every time it rained more than 2 inches. One exterior wall had shifted almost 3 inches off level over the years. The city inspector took one walk through the building and told Tyson quietly, "You'd save money burning it down." Tyson nodded once. Then he started rebuilding it anyway. Every morning began before sunrise. Tyson usually arrived at the property around 5:15 a.m., carrying black coffee in a steel thermos and blueprints rolled under one arm. The street outside stayed quiet that early, except for delivery trucks heading downtown and trains moving somewhere beyond the Cumberland River. Inside the building, the air smelled like wet brick dust and cut lumber. Tyson preferred it that way. Construction made sense to him because problems always had solutions. Expensive solutions sometimes. Painful ones. But still solutions. People were harder. Claire arrived later each morning around 8, always moving fast, always talking about the future. While Tyson coordinated permits and demolition crews, Claire tested menu ideas using portable burners plugged into temporary outlets near the back wall. Sometimes Tyson would hear her arguing with food suppliers on the phone while carrying sheets of drywall through the hallway. Other times he would look up from plumbing plans and find her sketching table layouts across old invoices. They worked beside each other constantly, but differently. Claire built outward, Tyson built underneath. That difference mattered more than either of them realized. By month 8, Tyson had invested nearly $400,000 into the project. Some came from savings left over after selling part of his commercial construction company years earlier. Some came through personal credit lines. One loan was secured against a lake property he inherited from his father near Hendersonville. Claire knew he was helping financially. She did not know how much. Tyson never talked numbers unless necessary. He cared more about progress. One November night, Tyson stayed at the warehouse alone until nearly 2 a.m., replacing damaged copper lines after a subcontractor disappeared mid-project. Rain hammered against the windows while old pipes rattled overhead. His knuckles were bleeding by the time he finished tightening the last valve. Claire arrived unexpectedly just before he locked up. She stood near the doorway wearing an oversized gray hoodie and holding 2 paper cups from a diner down the street. "You still alive in here?" she asked. Tyson wiped grease from his hands with a rag. "Barely." Claire handed him coffee. He noticed she looked exhausted too. Mascara faded beneath her eyes, hair tied back carelessly instead of styled for cameras. That was rare now. Her social media following had exploded during construction. 30,000 followers became 90,000, then 150,000. Food bloggers started visiting the site before it was even finished. Claire knew how to perform ambition publicly. She posted dramatic renovation clips with captions like, "Building something unforgettable in Nashville." People loved it. Tyson rarely appeared in the videos, usually just a blurred figure in the background carrying lumber or measuring walls. That suited him fine at first. Then small things started changing. One afternoon, Tyson walked into the warehouse office and found Claire recording an interview for a local lifestyle magazine. A young reporter sat across from her beside exposed brick walls Tyson had spent 3 nights restoring by hand. "What inspired you to create Juniper Oak?" the reporter asked. Claire smiled naturally toward the camera. "I wanted to prove you don't need investors or corporate backing to build something meaningful." Tyson stopped in the hallway. Claire continued speaking. "I've poured everything I have into this place. Not technically a lie, but not the truth either." Tyson stood there another few seconds before quietly walking away toward the rear kitchen. He said nothing about it later. Still, that sentence stayed with him. No investors, no corporate backing, as if the building itself had assembled overnight around her dream. Around month 14, the pressure intensified. Construction delays piled up. Nashville permit offices moved slowly. Material costs jumped nearly 20% after supply chain issues hit statewide. One refrigeration company demanded full payment up front before delivery. Tyson covered the gap personally. Again, Claire celebrated each problem solved like another step toward fame. Tyson calculated interest payments alone at night. One Friday evening, Tyson sat inside his truck outside First Horizon Bank reviewing spreadsheets under the dashboard light. The numbers were getting dangerous. He had crossed $700,000 in total exposure between direct investment, personal guarantees, and outstanding invoices. His accountant had warned him twice already. "You're carrying this project almost entirely yourself," Tyson knew. Still, every time he considered slowing down, he pictured Claire inside the unfinished dining room describing what the restaurant would become. And somehow, he kept going. Winter arrived hard that year. A pipe burst during a freeze in January and flooded the rear storage area ankle deep. Tyson spent 16 straight hours vacuuming water, replacing insulation, and preventing mold spread before inspectors arrived Monday morning. Claire posted polished tasting menu previews online that same weekend. The contrast grew quietly sharper. Tyson noticed. But he kept working, because the restaurant was becoming real now. The oak floors had finally been installed. Massive brass light fixtures hung over the main dining room. Custom leather booths arrived from North Carolina wrapped in plastic sheets. For the first time, juniper oak actually looked expensive. One evening, Claire walked through the finished dining room slowly while soft jazz played from temporary speakers. The sunset outside painted the brick walls amber. "This is exactly how I imagined it," she whispered. Tyson stood on a ladder adjusting pendant lights above the bar. "No," he said calmly. "It's better." Claire smiled at him then. A real smile. The kind that made Tyson forget exhaustion for a few minutes. That same week, a photographer from Nashville Scene arrived for a feature article about the city's most anticipated restaurant opening. Tyson spent the morning repairing ventilation fans on the roof while the interview happened downstairs. When he came back inside hours later, he saw the photographer taking portraits of Claire in the dining room. Designer dress, perfect makeup, wine glass in hand. The article was published 3 weeks later. Tyson read it alone in a Waffle House parking lot after a supplier meeting. The headline covered nearly half the page. Claire Holloway is redefining Southern dining in Nashville. The article called her a self-made culinary visionary. There were 6 photographs. Tyson appeared in one. Barely. His reflection was visible in the background of a kitchen stainless steel panel while carrying lumber. That night, Claire found Tyson reviewing revised plumbing invoices inside the office trailer behind the building. "You saw the article?" she asked carefully. Tyson nodded without looking up. "It was good." Claire leaned against the doorway. "You're mad." "No, you don't sound convincing." Tyson finally looked at her. "You want honesty?" Claire crossed her arms slightly. "Always." Tyson slid the magazine across the desk. "You could have mentioned the construction team." Claire exhaled slowly. "Tyson, these stories are branding. That doesn't answer the question." Claire stepped closer. "People connect to personal narratives. Investors do too. There are investors now." "Potentially." Tyson studied her face quietly. That word stayed in the room longer than either of them wanted. "Potentially." Claire softened her tone. "You know what I mean." Tyson nodded once. Maybe he did. Maybe that was the problem. Later that night after Claire left, Tyson remained alone inside the unfinished dining room. The building was silent except for the low hum of refrigeration systems finally running correctly. He walked slowly across the oak flooring he had installed plank by plank with his own crew. Then he noticed something hanging beside the entrance, a temporary concept board for juniper oak branding, gold lettering, elegant design. Underneath the logo were 4 words founded by Claire Holloway. Nothing else. No mention of Tyson. No mention of Cox Construction Solutions. No mention of the man whose money, labor permits, and sleepless nights had carried the building this far. Tyson stared at the sign for a long moment. Then he quietly took out his phone. Not to argue, not to complain. He opened a folder instead. Inside were scanned permits, payment records, contractor agreements, inspection approvals, and wire transfers dating back 14 months. Tyson created 3 backup copies that night. One on an encrypted hard drive, one in cloud storage, one printed and locked inside a safe at home. Then he turned off the lights and walked out into the freezing Nashville air alone. Gavin Mercer arrived during the 2nd year of construction. Tyson noticed the car first. Black Maserati, Georgia plates, parked illegally beside the loading zone outside Juniper Oak on a humid Thursday afternoon in July. Tyson was standing knee-deep beneath the building inside a cramped utility crawlspace when he heard unfamiliar shoes crossing the kitchen floor overhead. Expensive shoes sounded different on unfinished concrete, sharper, slower, like the person walking had never carried anything heavy in his life. A few minutes later, Claire leaned over the basement access opening. "You should come upstairs," she called down. Tyson shut off the flashlight clipped to his vest. "For what?" "I want you to meet someone." Tyson climbed the ladder slowly, shoulders stiff from 6 straight hours replacing gas lines beneath the kitchen. When he stepped into the dining room, the contrast was immediate. Claire stood beside a tall man wearing a tailored charcoal suit with no tie and sunglasses hanging from his shirt collar. Mid-40s, athletic build, perfect haircut, white teeth, the kind of man who looked assembled by a marketing team. Gavin Mercer extended his hand immediately. "Claire's told me a lot about you." Tyson shook once. "That's so," Gavin smiled smoothly. "She says you're the guy keeping this place alive." Tyson looked toward Claire briefly. She smiled but didn't answer. Gavin turned slowly, surveying the unfinished restaurant around him. "I gotta say," he said, "this neighborhood's about to explode financially." Tyson already knew that. That was why he bought the property through Redbriar Holdings before prices doubled in Germantown. Gavin continued walking through the dining room while speaking casually about restaurant groups, luxury hospitality branding, and investor circles in Atlanta and Dallas. Tyson listened quietly. Men like Gavin always talked in future tense. Tyson preferred numbers. "What exactly do you do?" Tyson finally asked. Gavin grinned. "I build concepts." Tyson nodded once. Construction workers usually hated vague answers. So did Tyson. Claire stepped in quickly. "Gavin owns stakes in 3 restaurants in Atlanta." "4 now," Gavin corrected. "We just closed another acquisition in Buckhead." The word acquisition irritated Tyson immediately. Restaurants weren't software companies. They weren't stock portfolios. At least they shouldn't be. But Claire looked impressed. That mattered more. Over the next few weeks, Gavin started appearing constantly. Lunch meetings, wine tastings, brand consultations, investor presentations. Tyson would arrive at sunrise covered in drywall dust and find Gavin already seated beside Claire, reviewing mood boards over expensive coffee. The balance inside the project slowly shifted. Claire used to ask Tyson about functionality. Now she asked Gavin about perception. One Tuesday afternoon, Tyson sat reviewing HVAC installation schedules when Claire approached carrying a tablet. "We're redesigning the dining room aesthetic," she said. Tyson looked up. "What's wrong with it?" "Nothing," Claire replied quickly. "We just want something more elevated." Tyson noticed that word too. Claire showed him updated renderings. The changes looked expensive and unnecessary. Imported Italian light fixtures instead of local ironwork. Custom marble bar surfaces replacing reclaimed oak. More mirrors, more gold trim, less warmth. Tyson studied the images silently. "This doubles maintenance costs," he said. Gavin appeared behind Claire holding an espresso cup. "But it photographs better." Tyson looked at him calmly. "I thought restaurants were supposed to serve food." Gavin smirked faintly. "In 2025, restaurants sell image first, food second." Claire laughed softly at that. Tyson didn't. That night he stayed late installing shelving and dry storage while Gavin and Claire drank wine in the dining room discussing launch strategy. Their voices echoed through the unfinished building. Tyson worked quietly beneath hanging work lights while hearing pieces of conversation drift through the hall. Nashville luxury market, high-value clientele, exclusive reservations, brand partnerships. Then Tyson heard his own name. Not loudly, but enough. Tyson's great, Claire said carefully. "He's just not really part of the public-facing side." Gavin answered something Tyson couldn't fully hear. Claire laughed afterward. A few minutes later, Gavin walked into the kitchen area where Tyson was tightening brackets onto steel shelving. "Man," Gavin said casually, "you've basically become part of the building itself." Tyson kept working. "Guess so." Gavin leaned against the prep counter. "You ever think about letting professionals handle the business side once this place opens?" Tyson finally looked at him. "Professionals, operations teams, branding experts, hospitality management, that kind of thing." Tyson tightened the last bolt carefully. "Building's still standing," he said. "Seems professionally handled to me." Gavin smiled politely, but Tyson noticed something behind it. Dismissal. Not personal hatred. Worse, the kind wealthy men reserved for people they considered useful but socially invisible. Over the next several months, Claire changed gradually. Not overnight. Small adjustments. At networking events, she introduced Tyson less specifically. Instead of saying, "This is Tyson. He's helping build Juniper Oak," she started saying, "This is Tyson." That was all. At first, Tyson told himself it didn't matter. Then came the investor deck. Claire emailed it one Friday evening asking Tyson to look over the construction budget section. Tyson opened the presentation at home around midnight while sitting at his kitchen counter. The first slide showed a dramatic rendering of Juniper Oak glowing beneath downtown Nashville lights. Claire Holloway presents the future of Southern fine dining. Tyson clicked through slowly. Market projections, brand strategy, revenue estimates, expansion possibilities. Then he reached the leadership slide. Claire's name appeared first with a full biography and professional photos. Gavin's name appeared second as strategic growth advisor. Tyson's name did not appear at all, not once. Tyson went back through the deck carefully. Nothing, no construction lead, no property ownership mention, no financial contributor acknowledgement, nothing. He sat there silently for nearly 5 minutes. Then he closed the laptop. The next morning, he drove to Juniper Oak before sunrise. Claire arrived around 8 carrying coffee and talking on Bluetooth headphones. She smiled when she saw him. "You reviewed the deck, yes." And Tyson looked at her calmly. "You forgot my name." Claire stopped walking. It wasn't intentional. Then what was it? Claire removed the earpiece slowly. Tyson. Investors respond better to simplified structures. You mean cleaner stories? Claire hesitated. That's not fair. Tyson stared at her for a long moment. The strange part wasn't anger. It was recognition. He finally understood something important. Claire no longer saw Juniper Oak as a restaurant. She saw it as elevation, a doorway into rooms she wanted access to. And Tyson did not belong in those rooms. Claire softened her voice. You know how important you are to this project. That's not the same thing as saying it publicly. Claire crossed her arms. You really care about publicity now? No. Then what's the issue? Tyson looked around the half-finished restaurant, saw the walls he rebuilt, the floors he leveled, the kitchen systems he designed. Then he looked back at Claire. The issue is people usually hide things for a reason. Claire's expression hardened slightly. You're overthinking this. Maybe. But Tyson noticed something else after that conversation. Claire stopped discussing finances openly around him. Meetings happened without warning. New consultants appeared. Several invoices were routed through accounts Tyson had never seen before. One afternoon, Tyson received a call from a banker at Pinnacle Financial Partners regarding a loan restructure connected to Juniper Oak. The banker assumed Tyson already knew about it. He didn't. After the call ended, Tyson sat alone inside his truck staring through the windshield for several minutes. Humidity fogged the glass edges. Thunder rolled somewhere over East Nashville. He pulled open the project expense folder beside him and started reviewing documents carefully. Line by line, numbers first, then signatures, then ownership structures. For the first time since meeting Claire, Tyson stopped operating emotionally and started operating like a contractor protecting an investment. That evening, he stayed inside the office trailer long after the crews left. Outside, the skeleton glow of Juniper Oak reflected against wet pavement under construction lights. Tyson opened his laptop, created a new encrypted folder, then began copying every contract connected to the project. Permits, bank transfers, vendor agreements, insurance policies, LLC registrations, lease drafts, everything. Around midnight, Claire texted him, "You still working?" Tyson looked at the message for a few seconds, then typed back, "Always." The paperwork arrived on a Tuesday morning in a black leather folder. Claire placed it on Tyson's desk inside the temporary office trailer behind Juniper Oak while rain hammered against the metal roof overhead. "You mind signing these today?" she asked casually. Tyson looked up from a supplier invoice. "What are they?" "Just restructuring documents." That answer immediately irritated him. People who understood contracts never called them just paperwork. Tyson wiped dust from his hands and opened the folder slowly. The first pages looked routine enough. Updated vendor allocations, operating agreements, tax structure revisions. Then he reached page 14. His eyes stopped moving. The document transferred operational authority for Juniper Oak Hospitality Group entirely to Claire Holloway. Page 18 limited liability protections connected to future debt exposure. Page 22 reclassified several construction investments as voluntary contractor contributions instead of ownership-linked capital. Tyson read every line twice. The rain outside grew heavier. Claire leaned against the filing cabinet, sipping iced coffee while pretending not to watch him. Finally, Tyson closed the folder. "When were you going to explain this part?" he asked calmly. Claire tilted her head slightly. "What part?" "The part where I lose legal control over everything." Claire exhaled softly. "Tyson, that's dramatic." "No. Dramatic is setting the building on fire. This is paperwork." Claire crossed her arms. "Gavin's attorneys recommended simplifying the ownership structure before launch." There it was again. Gavin. Always somewhere inside the conversation now. Tyson reopened the folder and flipped toward the signature pages. "You already signed." Claire nodded once. "It's standard." "For who?" "For restaurants trying to attract serious investors." Tyson looked directly at her. "You asking me to become unpaid labor on a project I financed?" Claire's jaw tightened slightly. "That's not what this is." Tyson tapped the paperwork with one finger. "That's exactly what this is." The silence afterward felt colder than the storm outside. Claire stepped closer. "You know I trust you. Then why does your paperwork say otherwise?" Claire's patience started slipping. "Because perception matters." Tyson. Tyson said nothing. Claire continued. "You don't understand how investors think." "No," Tyson replied quietly. "I understand exactly how they think." That was true. He had spent 20 years watching wealthy developers protect themselves behind contracts while smaller contractors absorbed risk. Tyson knew how money moved when things went wrong, and this paperwork was designed for things going wrong. Claire softened her voice again. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." Tyson leaned back slowly in his chair. "No, I'm reading it." Claire stared at him. Then came the sentence Tyson would remember later more clearly than almost anything else. "You know I wouldn't screw you over." Most honest people never needed to say that out loud. Tyson closed the folder carefully. "I'll review it tonight." Claire frowned. "It needs to be submitted tomorrow morning. Then tomorrow morning's when you'll get an answer." For the first time since they met, visible frustration crossed her face. Not sadness, not guilt. Frustration, as if Tyson had become an obstacle instead of a partner. Claire grabbed the folder sharply. "Fine." Then she left the trailer without another word. Tyson sat motionless for several seconds after the door slammed shut. Rainwater slid slowly down the office window beside him. Outside workers continued unloading kitchen equipment from delivery trucks while thunder rolled over Germantown. Tyson looked back at the papers. Then he reached for his phone. 3 hours later, he sat inside a downtown Nashville law office overlooking Broadway. Rebecca Sloan entered the conference room carrying the black folder under one arm and reading glasses in the other hand. Mid-50s, sharp posture, gray suit, calm eyes. She had represented Tyson once before during a dispute involving a hotel developer in Chattanooga. Tyson trusted her because she never wasted words. Rebecca sat down, opened the folder, and began reading silently. Tyson waited. The office remained quiet except for distant traffic outside 16 floors below. After nearly 20 minutes, Rebecca finally removed her glasses. "Well," she said flatly, "this is aggressive." Tyson leaned back. "How bad?" Rebecca slid several pages toward him. "Very bad if you sign it." Tyson studied her expression carefully. She didn't look surprised. That bothered him. Rebecca tapped the operating agreement. "This language removes meaningful control protections from you while maintaining substantial financial exposure." In English, "You keep the risk. She keeps the power." Tyson nodded once. That matched his instincts exactly. Rebecca continued flipping through pages. "They're also attempting to redefine prior contributions as non-equity support services." Tyson remained silent. Rebecca looked up. "Did you contribute capital personally?" "Yes." How much? Tyson gave her the number. Rebecca stopped writing for a moment. "Personally, yes." And the property, Tyson folded his hands together. "Purchased through Redbriar Holdings, LLC. Rebecca's eyes narrowed slightly with interest. She knows I bought the building." "That's not what I asked." Tyson understood immediately. "No." Claire did not fully understand the structure. Early in the project, Tyson had intentionally separated ownership layers for tax protection and liability management. The restaurant operating business sat separate from the property holding entity. Standard practice. At the time, he never imagined the distinction would matter personally. Now it mattered enormously. Rebecca leaned back in her chair slowly. Who controls Red Briar Holdings? I do. Anyone else? No. Rebecca closed the folder. That changes everything. Tyson looked toward the city skyline outside the windows. For the first time in months, he felt something settling into place internally. Not relief, clarity. Rebecca continued carefully. As it stands, she may control branding and restaurant operations eventually. But unless you transfer property ownership, she doesn't control the building itself. Tyson nodded once. That silence between them carried weight. Rebecca studied him closely. You still care about her. It wasn't a question. Tyson rubbed a hand across his jaw. Yeah. And Tyson looked at the folder. She's changing. Rebecca gave a dry half smile. No, she's revealing herself. That sentence stayed with Tyson the entire drive back to Germantown. Nashville traffic crawled slowly through late afternoon rain while construction cranes cut dark lines against the skyline. Tyson parked behind Juniper Oak around dusk. The restaurant looked almost finished now. Warm light glowed through front windows. Brass fixtures reflected against polished surfaces. From the outside, the place already resembled success. Inside, Claire stood near the bar reviewing wine inventory with Gavin. Both stopped talking when Tyson entered. Gavin smiled first. There he is. Tyson ignored him and looked at Claire. I'm not signing. The room became still instantly. Claire set down the clipboard slowly. You're seriously doing this? Tyson kept his tone calm. I'm protecting myself. Gavin stepped forward casually. Tyson, nobody's trying to cut you out. Tyson looked directly at him for the first time all evening. Then why does every contract say otherwise? Gavin's polished smile weakened slightly. Business structures evolve. Tyson nodded once. So do people. Claire walked closer now. You hired a lawyer. Tyson didn't answer immediately. That alone gave her the answer. Claire's face hardened. You think I'm stealing from you. I think paperwork matters. You're unbelievable. Tyson almost responded emotionally then. Almost. But he noticed something instead. Neither Claire nor Gavin looked shocked that he understood the contracts. They looked inconvenienced. That told Tyson more than anger ever could. Claire lowered her voice. You're making this ugly. Tyson glanced around the restaurant. At the oak floors, the hand-built shelves, the kitchen systems. 5 years of labor surrounded him in every direction. No, he said quietly. I'm making sure it stays legal. Then Tyson reached into his jacket pocket and placed a single document on the bar counter. Property ownership records for Red Briar Holdings, LLC. Claire looked down at the page, then back at Tyson. A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face for the first time in months. Very small, but real. Gavin picked up the document next. His expression changed too. Not dramatically, just enough. Tyson noticed both reactions immediately. Good contractors always notice structural weaknesses before collapse. Claire handed the paper back. You're threatening me now. Tyson shook his head. No. Then what is this? Tyson looked directly at her. A reminder. Silence filled the restaurant again. Outside, rainwater rolled down the front windows beneath the unfinished Juniper Oak sign. Finally, Tyson turned toward the exit. Claire called after him. Where are you going? Tyson paused near the doorway. Home. You're leaving for tonight. Claire folded her arms tightly. We open in 6 weeks. Tyson looked back once. I know exactly how long we've got. Then he walked outside into the rain without another word. Back inside the restaurant, Claire and Gavin remained standing beside the bar in silence, while thunder echoed over Nashville. And for the first time since construction began, Tyson stopped feeling like the only person carrying fear. Juniper Oak opened on a Friday night in late September. By 6 o'clock, the entire block outside the restaurant glowed under camera flashes and valet lights. Black SUVs lined the curb along 6th Avenue North. Women in designer dresses stepped carefully across temporary black carpet laid over the sidewalk. Men in tailored jackets stood holding whiskey glasses, while local photographers shouted names from behind velvet ropes. Nashville loved reinvention stories. Claire Holloway had become one. A temporary spotlight illuminated the gold juniper oak sign mounted above the entrance Tyson had personally reinforced 3 months earlier after discovering instability in the brick anchors. Nobody there knew that. Inside, live jazz drifted through hidden ceiling speakers Tyson had installed during a 16-hour overnight electrical correction when the original subcontractor failed inspection. Nobody knew that either. The restaurant looked flawless. Warm amber lighting reflected off polished walnut tables. White marble surfaces glowed beneath hanging brass fixtures. The open kitchen moved with military precision, while flames rose beneath cast iron pans. Every detail looked expensive. Tyson had built it that way. At 6:42 p.m., Tyson parked his old Ford F-150 in the alley behind the restaurant. The contrast between his truck and the luxury cars outside looked almost absurd now. He sat inside the cab for nearly a minute without moving. Rain earlier that afternoon had left the street shining beneath downtown lights. Music from inside Juniper Oak drifted faintly through the alley behind the building. Tyson looked at the brown envelope resting on the passenger seat beside him. Inside were copies of property records, lease agreements, LLC ownership filings, construction investment summaries, insurance liabilities, everything organized carefully in labeled folders, not for revenge, for protection. Tyson grabbed the envelope and stepped out of the truck. He wore dark jeans, clean boots, and a charcoal blazer Claire bought him nearly 2 years earlier for a charity dinner in Belle Meade. The jacket still fit. That bothered him more than it should have. As Tyson walked toward the front entrance, he noticed how many strangers occupied the building now. Influencers posed beside the Juniper Oak logo wall near the hostess stand. Local politicians shook hands beside the bar. Reporters carried cameras through the dining room filming plated dishes under warm lighting. Claire moved through the crowd like she belonged there naturally. White silk dress, hair pinned elegantly, diamond earrings Tyson had never seen before. She smiled at guests while touching elbows lightly during conversations. Every movement looked polished, practiced. Tyson stopped near the front doors. For a brief second, he simply watched. 5 years. 5 years of permits, loans, labor panic, sleepless nights, inspections, burst pipes. Contractor disputes and near financial collapse had turned into this one polished evening. And somehow, Tyson felt farther from the building than ever. A young hostess approached him with a professional smile. Reservation name, Tyson Cox. The hostess looked confused immediately. She checked the tablet twice. "I'm sorry, sir. I don't see your name." "That's all right," Tyson said calmly. "Claire's expecting me." The hostess hesitated. Before she could answer, Tyson noticed Gavin Mercer approaching from the bar area. Expensive navy suit, perfect posture, instant irritation crossing his face. There it is, Tyson thought. Gavin reached the entrance, smiling for appearances only. "Tyson," he said smoothly. "Didn't realize you were coming tonight." Tyson looked at him evenly. "I built the place." Gavin chuckled softly as if calming a difficult relative. "Tonight's complicated, investor-heavy crowd." Tyson remained still. So Gavin lowered his voice. "Claire's trying to maintain a certain image." Tyson almost laughed then. Not because it was funny, because the honesty finally arrived without disguise. "What image is that?" Tyson asked. Before Gavin answered, Claire appeared beside them. She noticed Tyson, then immediately noticed the envelope in his hand. Her smile faded almost invisibly, only for a second. But Tyson caught it. "Tyson," she said carefully, "you should have called. I didn't think I needed permission." Claire glanced around quickly. Several nearby guests had started paying attention. The timing embarrassed her already. Tyson recognized that instantly too. Claire lowered her voice. "We talked about tonight." "No," Tyson replied calmly. "You talked. I listened." Gavin stepped between them slightly. "Let's not do this here." Tyson looked past him toward the dining room. People filled nearly every table already. Servers moved through the crowd carrying smoked pork belly and bourbon-glazed quail beneath warm light Tyson had adjusted himself days earlier. The place smelled like oak smoke, butter whiskey, and expensive perfume. For one dangerous second, Tyson almost felt proud again. Then Claire spoke. "You need to leave." The sentence landed quietly. Worse because of that. Tyson looked directly at her. what Claire folded her arms. Tonight isn't the night for this. For what Claire glanced toward the envelope again. Whatever you're planning. Tyson held the envelope loosely at his side. I came to support the opening. That's not true. Tyson stared at her for several seconds. The strange thing was how calm he suddenly felt. No shouting, no panic, just clarity. Because for the first time in 5 years, Claire was no longer pretending. Gavin leaned toward Tyson slightly. Let's make this easy. Tyson looked at him. You really think this building belongs to you people now? Neither Claire nor Gavin answered. That was answer enough. A photographer nearby lifted his camera, instinctively sensing tension. Claire noticed immediately. Then everything accelerated. Security, Gavin said without raising his voice. 2 large men in black jackets appeared from near the hallway beside the bar. Tyson recognized one of them. He had approved the security office layout himself during renovation. The irony nearly made him smile. Sir, one guard said carefully, we're going to have to ask you to leave. Tyson didn't move. Inside the dining room, jazz music continued softly beneath conversation and glassware. No dramatic silence. No screaming scene, just quiet humiliation unfolding in public. Claire kept her expression controlled, professional, detached. That hurt more than anger would have. Tyson looked at her one last time. You're really doing this, Claire answered without hesitation. You're causing a scene. Tyson glanced around slowly. People watched from the bar now. A woman near the hostess stand whispered something while staring directly at him. 2 men in suits pretended not to watch while clearly listening. Gavin spoke again. Come on, Tyson, don't embarrass yourself. That sentence finally changed something, not emotionally, structurally, like the final crack spreading through concrete already weakened underneath. The security guard stepped closer. One placed a hand against Tyson's arm. Firm, professional. Tyson looked down at the hand briefly, then toward the dining room again. 5 years earlier, the building had been collapsing brick and standing water. Now strangers drank $1,200 bottles of bourbon beneath ceilings he rebuilt with his own hands. And the people standing inside believed he was the outsider. The guard tightened his grip slightly. Sir. Tyson slowly handed the brown envelope to the nearest hostess. She looked startled. Give this to Claire tomorrow morning, he said calmly. Claire's expression shifted for the first time. Not guilt. Concern. Small. Fast. Real. Tyson noticed. Good. The second guard moved beside him now. Together they guided Tyson toward the front entrance while cameras discreetly turned away and conversations lowered into whispers. Outside, humid Nashville air hit Tyson immediately. The street remained crowded with luxury cars and waiting guests. Behind him, the restaurant doors closed softly. Muted jazz continued inside. Tyson stood motionless on the sidewalk for several seconds. One security guard released his arm awkwardly. The other avoided eye contact. Neither man knew. None of them did. Tyson adjusted the sleeve of his blazer slowly. Then he looked once through the front window toward Claire standing beneath warm golden light inside Juniper Oak. She looked nervous now, not because she felt guilty, because she had finally realized Tyson wasn't reacting emotionally. He was observing, calculating, remembering. And Tyson Cox had always been most dangerous when he went quiet. The sidewalk outside Juniper Oak smelled like wet pavement cigar smoke and expensive cologne. Traffic crawled slowly past the restaurant while guests continued arriving beneath glowing valet lights. Nobody stopped the evening. Nobody rushed outside dramatically. The world almost never paused for humiliation. Tyson Cox understood that better than most people. He stood near the curb with both hands relaxed at his sides while the security guard stepped back toward the entrance behind him. One of them cleared his throat awkwardly. Sorry, man. Tyson looked at him briefly. You were doing your job. The guard nodded once relieved Tyson wasn't angry. Then the man disappeared back inside. Tyson remained where he was. Across the street, 2 women wearing cocktail dresses pretended not to stare while whispering to each other. A black Escalade pulled up beside the curb and handed keys to valet attendants. Music drifted softly through the restaurant windows. Inside life continued. That part stayed with Tyson more than being removed. Juniper Oak had already moved on without him before he even reached the sidewalk. A young couple approached the entrance laughing, then slowed slightly after noticing Tyson standing alone outside in a blazer with security still near the door. The man glanced at Tyson's old Ford truck parked farther down the block. The assumption happened instantly. Disgruntled contractor, jealous ex-boyfriend, drunk employee. People always filled silence with whatever story felt easiest. Tyson didn't correct anyone. He looked through the restaurant windows instead. Claire stood near the center dining room now beside a local television reporter. Her posture remained perfect. Chin slightly lifted, calm smile restored. Professional. Tyson noticed one thing immediately, though. Every few seconds, Claire glanced toward the entrance. Checking. Not for him. For damage. Gavin appeared beside her, carrying 2 champagne glasses. He leaned close, speaking near her ear while smiling toward guests. Claire nodded, but Tyson caught the tension in her shoulders, even through the glass. Good. Because now she understood something, too. Tyson had left quietly. And quiet men with paperwork were harder to control than loud men with anger. A black sedan parked beside the curb near Tyson. A middle-aged man stepped out carrying a camera bag and press credentials clipped to his jacket pocket. The reporter paused after recognizing Tyson from the scene moments earlier. "You all right?" the man asked carefully. Tyson looked at the badge. Nashville Ledger. "Fine." The reporter studied him for another second. Then his eyes shifted toward the restaurant entrance. What happened? Tyson could have answered 100 different ways. He could have exposed Claire publicly right there on the sidewalk. Could have pulled documents from the envelope copies inside his truck. Could have started a loud public fight beneath cameras and flashing lights. Instead, Tyson simply said, "Misunderstanding." The reporter looked disappointed. Tyson almost respected that. Sensational stories paid bills. Still, the reporter didn't leave immediately. "You work for the restaurant." Tyson looked through the windows again. Something cold settled into place internally then. Not rage. Finality. "I built it," he said. The reporter blinked slightly. Before he could ask another question, Tyson turned and walked toward the alley. Behind him, Juniper Oak glowed against the Nashville night like a polished advertisement for success. But Tyson knew every weakness hidden beneath those walls. He reached his truck and climbed inside. The brown envelope was gone now, but duplicate copies remained in a locked case beneath the back seat. Tyson rested both hands on the steering wheel without starting the engine. His phone buzzed. Claire. He stared at the screen while the call rang out, then stopped. Another message appeared seconds later. "We need to talk privately." Tyson read it once. No apology, no explanation, just damage control. He locked the phone screen and set it face down. Rainwater still clung to the windshield from earlier storms. Neon reflections from downtown bars flickered across the glass in shifting colors. Tyson leaned back slowly against the seat. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to replay everything clearly. Not the good memories, the details. The contracts Claire stopped discussing openly. The investor meetings he was excluded from. The interviews where his name disappeared. The paperwork designed to erase ownership while keeping liability attached to him. The security guards tonight, not emotional decisions, strategic ones. Planned. That realization hurt differently. Tyson started the truck. The engine coughed twice before turning over fully. He drove 2 blocks before pulling into a nearly empty parking lot behind an old hardware store near Jefferson Street. Then he made the call. Rebecca Sloan answered on the second ring. "You left already?" she asked. Tyson stared through the windshield. "They had security remove me." Silence. Not shocked silence. Legal silence. Rebecca finally spoke carefully. In front of witnesses. "Yes." "Anyone recording?" "Probably." Rebecca exhaled slowly. "Did you react?" "No." "Good." Tyson rubbed a hand across his jaw. Inside the restaurant district several blocks away, police sirens echoed faintly through downtown traffic. Rebecca's voice remained calm. "Tell me exactly what happened." Tyson described everything in order. The entrance, Gavin, Claire telling him to leave, security touching him physically, the witnesses, the envelope. Rebecca interrupted only twice for specifics. When he finished the line, stayed quiet for several seconds. Then Rebecca asked one question. "Do you still want to protect her?" Tyson looked down at his rough hands resting against the steering wheel. 5 years earlier, Claire Holloway had stood inside a collapsing warehouse, describing a dream restaurant nobody else believed could exist. Tyson had believed her. More dangerously, he had trusted her. "I don't know," he answered honestly. Rebecca's tone hardened slightly. "You need to decide quickly." Tyson knew she was right, because once lawyers entered, fully emotions became liabilities. "Meet me tomorrow morning," Rebecca said. 8 o'clock. "All right." And Tyson, "Yeah, bring every document you have." The call ended. Tyson remained parked another 20 minutes. His phone buzzed 3 more times, Claire calling again. Then another text. "You embarrassed me tonight." Tyson stared at the message. "Not you hurt me, not we need to fix this, you embarrassed me." That sentence removed the last remaining uncertainty. Tyson deleted nothing. Instead, he took screenshots and archived every message into the encrypted project folder already stored across multiple drives. Construction had taught him something years ago. When buildings collapse, the people who survive are usually the ones who documented every warning sign early. Around midnight, Tyson finally drove home. His house sat outside Hendersonville near Old Hickory Lake. Quiet neighborhood, brick exterior, no luxury cars, no modern architecture magazine aesthetic, just solid construction. Tyson unlocked the front door and entered darkness. The silence inside felt strange after the noise of downtown. He loosened his blazer and walked directly toward the small office beside the kitchen. Metal filing cabinets lined one wall. Blueprints stacked neatly across shelves, hard drives organized in labeled containers. Tyson switched on the desk lamp. Warm yellow light filled the room. Then he began working, not emotionally, methodically. He opened every folder connected to Juniper Oak. Construction invoices, vendor contracts, property acquisition records, bank loans, insurance policies, permit approvals, text messages, emails, photographs documenting each construction phase. Tyson organized everything chronologically, 3 separate backup copies, 1 encrypted digitally, 1 stored externally, 1 physical. Around 2:13 a.m., he paused while reviewing early financing documents and noticed something important, very important. A lease clause. Gavin's attorneys added 6 months earlier referenced occupancy rights tied specifically to compliance with property management approval. At the time, Tyson signed because the language appeared routine. Now it mattered, because Tyson himself controlled property management authority through Red Briar Holdings, which meant Claire and Gavin had removed the building owner from his own property during a public business event. Tyson leaned back slowly in his chair. For the first time that night, he almost smiled. Not because he enjoyed conflict, because facts were beginning to line up cleanly. Outside wind moved through trees near the lake while distant thunder faded across Tennessee skies. Tyson looked once toward the framed architectural rendering of Juniper Oak hanging on the office wall. Claire had signed it for him nearly 3 years earlier. "Couldn't have done this without you." Tyson stared at the sentence a long moment. Then he opened a storage box beneath the desk and placed the frame inside without another word. Rebecca Sloan arrived at her office before sunrise. Tyson was already waiting outside when she pulled into the underground garage at 7:41 a.m. He stood beside his truck holding 2 storage boxes filled with documents. No wasted motion, no visible anger. Rebecca noticed that immediately. Most people walked into legal fights emotionally flooded. Tyson walked in like a contractor preparing for an inspection. That usually meant 2 things. The damage was serious, and the evidence already existed. They carried the boxes upstairs in silence. By 8:05 a.m., Juniper Oak covered nearly the entire conference table inside Rebecca's office. Bank statements, construction permits, vendor agreements, insurance certificates, operating contracts, text logs, property filings. Tyson had labeled everything by year and category using black markers and color tabs. Rebecca flipped through the folders slowly while drinking black coffee. "You documented all this yourself," Tyson nodded. "Always do." Rebecca almost smiled. That habit may have just saved you. Outside the conference room windows, downtown Nashville slowly woke beneath gray morning clouds. Traffic thickened along Broadway while construction cranes moved across the skyline. Inside the office, Rebecca opened a property folder connected to Red Briar Holdings, LLC. This time she studied it more carefully. Then she leaned back in her chair. "Well," she said quietly, "Claire has a much bigger problem than she realizes." Tyson sat across from her silently. Rebecca tapped the documents. Juniper Oak Hospitality Group operates the restaurant brand, but Red Briar Holdings owns the actual property, the building infrastructure, and portions of the installed equipment systems. Tyson nodded once. That structure originally existed for liability separation. Now it looked almost prophetic. Rebecca continued. And according to these lease agreements, the restaurant tenants are already in technical default. Tyson looked up. How Rebecca slid several pages toward him. Late operational reimbursement payments. Unauthorized structural modifications. Non-disclosed financing arrangements. Tyson read quietly. He remembered several of those violations now. At the time, Claire insisted they were temporary fixes. Rebecca continued flipping pages. Also, she paused briefly. This clause matters. She pointed toward a highlighted section. Property owner reserves the right to revoke operational occupancy in cases involving financial misconduct, reputational liability, or breach of contractual fiduciary obligations. Tyson read it twice. Gavin's lawyers added that. Ironic, Rebecca replied. Very ironic, because now the clause protected Tyson instead. Rebecca removed her glasses slowly. Did Claire ever formally buy into Red Briar Holdings number any signed transfer agreements number? Rebecca nodded once. Then, legally speaking, she built a restaurant business inside a building she never actually controlled. The room stayed quiet. Tyson stared at the documents without speaking. Not satisfaction, not revenge, just recognition. The truth had finally become simple enough to hold clearly. Rebecca's phone rang. She glanced at the screen. Unknown number. Tyson already knew. Rebecca answered calmly. Rebecca Sloan speaking. Claire's voice came through faintly, even from across the table. Sharp, controlled, concerned. Is Tyson there? Rebecca looked at Tyson once before replying. My client is present. Yes. A pause. The word client changed everything officially. Claire understood that too. I'd like to speak with him privately. Rebecca's tone stayed neutral. You may speak through counsel. Silence again. Then Claire lowered her voice. This is getting ridiculous. Rebecca leaned back in her chair. No, Miss Holloway. What's ridiculous is attempting to remove the property owner from his own commercial asset during a public launch event. Tyson watched the skyline outside while Rebecca spoke. Claire responded quickly now. You don't understand the situation. Oh, I understand it very well. Another silence. Then Claire asked the real question. What exactly does Tyson want? Rebecca looked toward Tyson. He answered quietly. The truth. Rebecca repeated it into the phone. Claire laughed once under her breath. Not amusement, stress. Then she spoke carefully. Gavin says Tyson's overreacting because he's emotionally attached. Tyson finally looked back toward the phone. There it was. The strategy. Paint him emotional, unstable, possessive. Rebecca answered before Tyson could. My advice would be not to continue that narrative publicly. The call ended 30 seconds later. Rebecca placed the phone down slowly. She's scared. Tyson rubbed a hand across his jaw. Of losing the restaurant, Rebecca shook her head. No. Of losing the story. That distinction mattered, because Juniper Oak wasn't just business anymore. It was Claire's identity, self-made chef, independent founder, luxury Southern visionary. The problem was Tyson possessed documents capable of dismantling that narrative line by line. At 10:15 a.m., Rebecca filed the first notices electronically. Formal demand for financial disclosure. Preservation notice regarding surveillance footage and internal communications. Notification of potential lease breach investigation. And one more document Tyson hadn't expected. Notice of occupancy review. That'll get their attention, Rebecca said calmly. Tyson stared at the paperwork. What happens now? Rebecca closed the folder. Now they panic. She was right. Claire called 6 times before noon, Gavin twice. Tyson answered neither. By early afternoon, Juniper Oak's operations manager emailed requesting an urgent discussion regarding misunderstandings. Tyson archived the message. At 2:07 p.m., another email arrived from Claire directly. Short. No greeting. No apology. "You're hurting the restaurant." Tyson read the sentence twice, then closed the laptop. Not me. The restaurant. Still protecting the image first. Late that afternoon, Tyson drove downtown for the first time since the opening, not to confront anyone, to observe. Rain clouds hung low over Nashville again while traffic crawled through Germantown intersections. Tyson parked half a block from Juniper Oak and watched quietly from inside the truck. The restaurant looked different during daylight, less magical, more fragile. Employees moved nervously near the entrance. 2 delivery drivers argued beside the loading zone. A man Tyson recognized from wine distribution walked out, shaking his head while speaking angrily into his phone. Word was spreading already. Business communities always sensed instability fast. Tyson noticed another thing, too. Claire's new Range Rover sat crooked near the rear alley, recently purchased. Temporary tags still attached. Expensive. Tyson looked at it for several seconds, then opened one of the financial folders beside him. There it was. A recent operational transfer from Juniper Oak hospitality accounts large enough to cover exactly that kind of vehicle. Tyson leaned back slowly. Not illegal by itself, but reckless. Especially while vendor invoices remained unpaid. His phone buzzed again. This time, Rebecca. "I just received preliminary banking disclosures." Tyson straightened slightly. "And several expenses don't align with declared operational use." Tyson looked again toward the Range Rover behind the restaurant. "I think I just found one." Rebecca went quiet briefly. "Good. Keep documenting everything." Before hanging up, she added one more thing. "Oh, and Tyson. Yeah. Do not let them bait you emotionally now. That's their only leverage left." Tyson understood, because facts were starting to move faster than narratives. As evening settled over Nashville, Tyson remained parked across from Juniper Oak, watching staff prepare for dinner service. The building still looked beautiful. That part hurt. Not because he missed Claire specifically anymore, but because he remembered who she used to be before all this. Or maybe who he thought she was. Around 7 o'clock, Claire finally appeared outside the restaurant. No cameras now, no designer smile. She spotted Tyson's truck immediately across the street. For several seconds, she simply stood there beneath the glowing Juniper Oak sign. Then she crossed toward him, fast, angry. Tyson rolled the window halfway down as she approached. "What are you doing?" she demanded. "Watching. You're trying to intimidate me now." Tyson looked at her calmly. "No." Claire folded her arms tightly against the cold wind. "Then why are you here?" Tyson glanced toward the restaurant. "Making sure I remember what $700,000 looks like." That hit harder than yelling would have. Claire's expression changed immediately. Because money made everything real, not romance, not betrayal. Numbers. "You're seriously trying to destroy this place," she said quietly. Tyson held her gaze. "You already tried to erase me from it." Claire looked away first. Traffic lights reflected across the wet street between them while customers continued arriving for dinner service behind her. Finally, Claire spoke again. "You could have just talked to me." Tyson almost answered immediately, then stopped. Because that sentence itself was dishonest. He had tried talking. For months. She just preferred documents that removed him silently instead. Claire stepped back from the truck slowly. "This isn't over." Tyson nodded once. "I know." Then Claire turned and walked back toward Juniper Oak beneath the gold lights glowing over the entrance. Tyson watched her disappear inside the building he legally owned. And for the first time since opening night, he realized something important. Claire still believed this was a relationship fight. She had not yet understood it had become a records problem, and records were far less forgiving than emotions. By Monday morning, Nashville's restaurant industry had started whispering. Not publicly. Not yet. But quietly enough for the pressure to spread. Juniper Oak had opened only 3 days earlier, yet vendors were already calling suppliers asking strange questions about ownership disputes and delayed payments. In hospitality, rumors moved faster than delivery trucks. Tyson Cox watched it happen without saying a word publicly. That made people even more nervous. At 8:12 a.m., Rebecca Sloan forwarded Tyson a copy of the first formal response from Juniper Oak Hospitality Group. 23 pages. Aggressive tone. Heavy legal language. Minimal facts. Tyson read the document slowly at his kitchen counter while drinking black coffee. The response described him as an external contractor attempting to interfere with restaurant operations following a personal disagreement. Tyson almost smiled at the wording. External contractor. 5 years reduced to 2 words. Rebecca called while he was halfway through page 12. They're trying to frame this emotionally, she said immediately. I noticed. They're avoiding direct discussion of the property structure. Tyson looked again at the document. She was right. The response barely mentioned Red Briar Holdings at all, because they couldn't, not without acknowledging Tyson's control over the building itself. Rebecca continued, That tells me they still think public image can save them. Tyson walked toward the window overlooking the lake behind his house. Clouds rolled low across the water while morning wind bent the trees near the dock. What happens now? Rebecca paused briefly. Now we apply pressure through facts. By noon, she had done exactly that. Formal notice of lease default, demand for full accounting disclosure, request for reimbursement records tied to construction financing, and most importantly, a scheduled property compliance inspection. That one hit immediately. At 1:40 p.m., Tyson received a call from Juniper Oaks operations manager, a nervous man named Kyle Benton. Mr. Cox. Kyle said quickly, I think there's been some misunderstanding here. Tyson remained calm. What kind? Well, staff are getting worried. Tyson leaned back in his chair. About what the inspection notice? Tyson looked toward the folders spread across his office desk. That sounds like management's problem. Kyle lowered his voice instinctively. Look between us. A lot of people here didn't know you owned the building. There it was again. Not knew you helped. Not knew you financed it. Owned. The word changed everything. Tyson answered carefully. I never hid it. Kyle hesitated. That's not really the version people heard. Of course it wasn't. Tyson ended the call politely and returned to organizing records. By evening, more cracks appeared. A refrigeration supplier filed a payment complaint. A whiskey distributor temporarily paused shipments pending financial clarification. 2 kitchen contractors contacted Tyson directly after hearing rumors of legal disputes. Then came the payroll issue. At 6:17 p.m., Tyson received a message from a former accounting assistant who briefly worked under Claire during pre-launch operations. The woman's name was Emily Vargas. Tyson remembered her vaguely. Quiet, efficient, usually buried beneath spreadsheets during vendor meetings. The message was short. You should look at employee payroll transfers from August. Nothing else. Tyson forwarded it directly to Rebecca. Within 2 hours, she called back. Emily wasn't exaggerating. Tyson straightened slightly. What'd you find? Rebecca's voice sharpened. Several payroll reserve transfers appear redirected through operational expense accounts tied to luxury purchases. Tyson stayed silent, because now he understood where this was going. Not just betrayal. Misuse. Potential fraud. Rebecca continued. I'm requesting emergency preservation orders on all financial records immediately. Tyson rubbed his jaw slowly. Outside darkness settled over Hendersonville while distant thunder rolled somewhere beyond the lake again. Then his phone buzzed with another incoming call. Claire. Tyson answered this time. Neither spoke for 2 seconds. Finally, Claire broke first. You're scaring people. Tyson sat quietly at his desk. I'm requesting records. You know exactly what you're doing. Yes, Claire exhaled sharply. You've turned the staff against me. Tyson looked at the payroll documents beside him. No, he replied calmly. Your accounting did that. Silence. A dangerous silence, because Claire now realized Tyson had seen deeper into the numbers. Her voice lowered. You're digging through everything now. I should have done it sooner. Claire sounded tired suddenly. Not emotional, exhausted. You don't understand how hard I worked for this. Tyson almost answered immediately, then stopped himself. Because that sentence was carefully designed. Redirect emotion, avoid facts. Tyson kept his tone even. How much did the Range Rover cost? Claire went completely silent. That silence confirmed everything. Finally, she snapped. You're tracking my purchases now. I'm tracking company money. That vehicle was business-related. Tyson leaned back slowly. So were the resort charges in Scottsdale. Another silence. Longer this time. Then Claire spoke again, colder now. You're trying to ruin me because I embarrassed you. Tyson stared at the dark office window, reflecting his face back at him. No, he said quietly. I'm trying to understand when you stopped being honest. Claire laughed bitterly. God, you always do this. Do what act morally superior because you stay calm. Tyson almost responded emotionally then. Almost. Instead, he looked down at his hands. Scarred knuckles, old construction cuts, permanent roughness built from years of physical work. He remembered replacing pipes overnight while Claire filmed interviews upstairs. Remembered sleeping inside the truck during budget crises. Remembered personally wiring emergency funds to keep contractors paid. Calm wasn't superiority, calm was survival. I'm done talking tonight, Tyson said. Claire's voice sharpened instantly. If you push this further, you'll destroy Juniper Oak too, Tyson answered honestly. You already did that when you made the building a lie. Then he hung up. The next morning, Nashville woke up to its first public sign something was wrong. A small online food publication posted an article titled, Questions Emerge Around Juniper Oak Ownership Structure. The article avoided accusations directly, but it mentioned property disputes, investor tensions, and conflicting records involving building ownership. Tyson's name appeared 3 times. Claire's publicist released a statement within 2 hours calling the article misleading speculation fueled by personal conflicts. That phrase irritated Rebecca immediately. She keeps making the mistake of turning this emotional publicly, Rebecca said during a conference call later that afternoon. Judges hate that when documents exist. Tyson sat silently while Rebecca's legal team reviewed new disclosures. Then another surprise surfaced. A sous chef from Juniper Oak requested a private meeting. His name was Marcus Reed, 31, former military cook. Quiet reputation. Tyson met him that evening at a small diner near East Nashville. Marcus looked nervous from the second he sat down. You probably don't remember me, Marcus said. I remember everybody who worked construction phase. Marcus nodded once. You fixed our freezer yourself opening week. Tyson shrugged slightly. Needed fixing. The waitress brought coffee. Neither man touched. Marcus lowered his voice. People at the restaurant are talking. Tyson waited. Claire told staff you were unstable. No surprise there. Marcus continued. But most of us knew that didn't make sense. Tyson remained quiet. Marcus looked down briefly before speaking again. You paid payroll once. That got Tyson's attention. What? Back in March. There wasn't enough money in operations. Claire panicked. Next morning, payroll cleared anyway. Tyson remembered exactly. He wired emergency funds through a secondary account because Claire promised reimbursements after investor capital arrived. Marcus shook his head slowly. Most staff think she built the whole place herself. Tyson stared out the diner window toward traffic moving through wet Nashville streets. That's what she wanted people to think. Marcus hesitated again, then reached into his jacket pocket. He slid a flash drive across the table. Tyson looked down at it. What's this back office exports, scheduling logs, internal messages, some accounting snapshots? Tyson didn't touch it immediately. Why give this to me? Marcus answered without hesitation. Because you're the only person who ever treated the kitchen staff like human beings. That hit Tyson harder than any legal document so far. Not because it was dramatic, because it sounded true. Marcus stood to leave. Before walking away, he stopped beside the booth. One more thing, he said quietly. Yeah, Claire's scared of the property inspection tomorrow. Tyson looked up slowly. Why? Marcus swallowed once. Because there are things in that building nobody disclosed. Then he left the diner without another word. Tyson sat motionless for several seconds, staring at the flash drive on the table beside his untouched coffee. Outside, rain started falling across Nashville again. And for the first time since opening night, Tyson realized the damage inside Juniper Oak might go far deeper than ownership lies. The inspection began at 9 a.m. sharp. Tyson Cox arrived at Juniper Oak wearing work boots, dark jeans, and the same gray jacket he used during construction walkthroughs years earlier. No cameras waited outside this time. No velvet ropes. No jazz music. Only tension. Rain clouds pressed low over Germantown while delivery trucks idled beside the curb. The glowing excitement surrounding Juniper Oak's opening week had already dimmed into nervous silence. Tyson parked beside the alley entrance and stepped out slowly. Claire stood near the rear service door with Gavin Mercer and two attorneys Tyson had never seen before. All four stopped talking when Tyson approached. Claire looked exhausted. Not physically, strategically. The confidence she carried on opening night had thinned around the edges now. Her posture remained composed, but Tyson noticed the small details clenched, jaw-tired eyes, restless hands. Fear always leaked somewhere eventually. Gavin spoke first. "You really brought inspectors into this." Tyson glanced toward the building. "I brought property compliance review onto my property." Gavin's smile disappeared completely. One city inspector approached carrying a clipboard while Rebecca Sloan walked beside him reviewing paperwork. Rebecca nodded once toward Tyson. Everything was already in motion. Claire folded her arms tightly. "You're humiliating everyone who works here." Tyson looked at her calmly. "No. I'm verifying records." Claire stepped closer. "This could shut us down." Tyson answered quietly. "Then maybe somebody should have followed the lease." The inspectors entered through the kitchen first. Tyson followed silently beside Rebecca while Claire and Gavin trailed several steps behind. Inside, Juniper Oak looked different in daylight again. Less glamorous, more operational. Staff members moved carefully around the inspectors while pretending not to listen. Stainless steel surfaces reflected harsh morning light instead of soft evening gold. Marcus Reed stood near the prep station watching Tyson enter. He gave one almost invisible nod. Tyson noticed. The lead inspector, a stocky man named Harold Bennett, reviewed equipment documentation first. "Walk-in refrigeration permits?" Claire immediately looked toward the kitchen manager. The kitchen manager looked toward Tyson instinctively. That alone said enough. Tyson reached into a folder and handed over permit copies without speaking. Harold studied the paperwork. "Everything checks here." Claire exhaled softly. Too early. The inspection moved deeper. Fire suppression systems, electrical compliance, basement access, storage inventory. Tyson answered technical questions automatically because he personally supervised most installations. Every correct answer shifted the room slightly. Employees began realizing something uncomfortable. The quiet man Claire called just a contractor knew the building better than anyone present. At 10:17 a.m., the inspection reached the rear office. That was when things changed. Harold frowned while reviewing electrical routing maps. This room wasn't listed on the revised occupancy filings. Claire spoke quickly. "It's temporary storage." Harold looked around slowly. "No," he said. "Temporary storage doesn't get dedicated refrigeration lines and secured data locks." Tyson remained silent. Gavin stepped in smoothly. There were some late-stage operational modifications. Harold turned toward him. Approved by who, nobody answered immediately. Rebecca spoke next. "We requested all modification records 3 business days ago." Claire's expression hardened instantly. "This is ridiculous." Harold ignored her and opened the office storage cabinet. Inside sat multiple unopened electronics boxes, wine inventory records, and something else Tyson recognized immediately. Unregistered POS hardware. His stomach tightened slightly. Harold noticed, too. These terminals weren't declared. Gavin stepped forward again. "Those are backup systems." Harold looked unconvinced. Backup systems still require registration under occupancy compliance. Tyson finally understood what Marcus meant. Things inside the building had been hidden deliberately. Not catastrophic things. Worse. Quiet financial shortcuts, the kind that accumulated legal weight slowly. The inspection continued another 40 minutes. Then came the footage request. Rebecca requested preservation access to all surveillance recordings from opening night, including entrance security cameras. Claire reacted immediately. "That's unnecessary." Rebecca didn't even look at her. "Your client publicly removed the property owner from commercial premises during an active lease period." Gavin spoke carefully now. You're escalating this beyond reason. Rebecca finally turned toward him. No, your side already escalated it when security got involved. Tyson stood near the back hallway, listening quietly while kitchen staff pretended to focus on prep work nearby. Nobody was pretending very well anymore. Harold requested the surveillance archive directly from Juniper Oak's IT contractor. Claire looked trapped for the first time. Not angry, trapped. Because refusing access would look worse than compliance. At 11:32 a.m., the footage began downloading. The atmosphere inside the restaurant shifted completely after that. Nobody spoke casually anymore. Even Gavin stopped performing confidence. Tyson stood near the rear kitchen doors while Rebecca reviewed preliminary accounting discrepancies with another compliance officer. Then his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. Mr. Cox. Yes, this is Daniel Hayes with Channel 5 Investigates. Tyson closed his eyes briefly. Here it comes. Daniel continued. We're hearing there's an ownership dispute involving Juniper Oak. Tyson looked across the kitchen toward Claire, speaking urgently with her attorneys. Who told you that? A lot of people. Of course. Restaurants leaked information faster than politics. Tyson answered carefully. I'm not giving interviews. Were you removed from the property during opening night? Tyson remained silent too long. That silence answered enough. Daniel lowered his voice slightly. People are recording pieces of the story already, Mr. Cox. If you don't speak eventually, someone else will shape it for you. Tyson looked again toward Claire. 5 years ago, she stood inside an abandoned warehouse describing a dream. Now attorneys surrounded her beside hidden financial records and surveillance preservation notices. I'll think about it, Tyson said. Then he hung up. At noon, the surveillance footage finally loaded. Everyone gathered inside the rear office. Claire stood stiff beside Gavin while Rebecca connected the video archive onto a monitor. Tyson remained near the doorway. The footage began playing silently. Opening night. Warm lighting, guests arriving, champagne trays moving through crowds. Then Tyson appeared near the front entrance holding the brown envelope. The camera angle captured everything clearly. Claire speaking to him, Gavin stepping between them, security approaching. Then the key moment. Audio quality was weak, but still understandable. Gavin's voice, he's useless now. The room went completely still. Tyson watched Claire's face carefully. Not shame. Calculation. She was already measuring damage. The footage continued. Claire telling security, he's not part of this anymore. Then Tyson being physically escorted outside. Harold Bennett looked away from the monitor slowly. That's your building owner. Nobody answered. Rebecca paused the video, then rewound another section. A smaller detail appeared. Gavin speaking privately with one of the attorneys before Tyson arrived earlier that evening. The audio sharpened briefly near the microphone. Once he signs off, he has no leverage left anyway. Tyson felt something settle coldly into place inside him. Not surprise. Confirmation. Rebecca looked toward Tyson once. No words needed. Now there was evidence beyond contracts. Intent. Claire finally broke the silence. You're twisting context. Rebecca folded her arms calmly. Then explained the context. Claire opened her mouth, stopped, because there wasn't a version of the footage that helped her anymore. Gavin stepped forward aggressively. This proves nothing legally. Rebecca almost smiled. No, she replied, but it proves awareness. The distinction mattered enormously. Tyson watched Claire carefully again. She looked smaller now somehow. Not physically, structurally, like the polished public version of her was beginning to collapse under documented reality. Outside the office, whispers spread through the kitchen staff. People already knew something serious had happened. Marcus Reed stood near the prep counter watching quietly. So did several servers. The narrative was changing in real time. And once workers stopped believing management, completely businesses became unstable very quickly. Rebecca shut off the monitor. We're filing expanded claims. Claire looked stunned. For what Rebecca gathered the folders slowly. Fraudulent misrepresentation, financial concealment, potential misuse of operational funds. Gavin cursed under his breath. Tyson remained still. Claire looked directly at him then. For a moment the anger disappeared entirely. Only fear remained. Real fear. Because she finally understood something Tyson realized days earlier. This was no longer about relationships, or heartbreak, or embarrassment. It had become documentation, and documentation did not care who cried afterward. As Rebecca headed toward the exit, Daniel Hayes appeared outside the front windows holding a camera crew umbrella beneath the rain. Tyson noticed him immediately. So did Claire. And judging by the panic crossing her face, she understood exactly what came next. Daniel Hayes waited beneath a black umbrella outside Juniper Oak while rain slid down the restaurant windows behind him. Two camera operators stood several feet back near a white Channel 5 news van parked beside the curb. Tyson noticed something immediately. Daniel wasn't smiling. Most reporters smiled too much when they smelled public collapse. Daniel looked focused instead. That mattered. Rebecca Sloan stepped beside Tyson near the entrance. "You don't owe anybody a statement," she said quietly. Tyson looked toward the news crew through the rain. "I know. Then don't let pride make decisions." Tyson almost answered immediately. But pride wasn't the problem anymore. The problem was silence, because Claire and Gavin already understood something dangerous. If Tyson refused to speak publicly, they could keep shaping him into whatever version protected them best. Unstable, obsessive, disgruntled, emotional. Tyson hated public attention. But he hated lies more. Daniel noticed Tyson approaching and lowered the umbrella slightly. "Mr. Cox." Tyson stopped 3 feet away. "Daniel." The reporter blinked once. "You remembered my name. You called yesterday." Rain tapped softly against parked cars around them, while downtown traffic hissed through wet Nashville streets. Daniel gestured toward a nearby coffee shop across the block. "We can talk privately." Rebecca looked at Tyson carefully. Tyson nodded once. 20 minutes later, they sat inside a nearly empty diner-style cafe overlooking Germantown Avenue. The lunch crowd hadn't arrived yet. Country music played softly from ceiling speakers while coffee steamed between them at the booth. Daniel placed a recorder on the table but didn't switch it on immediately. "That's your choice," he said. Tyson appreciated that. Most reporters recorded first and explained later. Tyson looked out the window briefly toward Juniper Oak glowing through rain across the street. Then he said, "Go ahead." Daniel switched on the recorder. "What exactly is your relationship to Juniper Oak?" Tyson answered without hesitation. "I built it, not emotionally, factually." Daniel waited for more. Tyson continued calmly. "I purchased the property through Redbriar Holdings, LLC 5 years ago. I financed portions of the construction personally. I managed permits, contractors, inspections, infrastructure installation, and operational setup." Daniel stared at him for a moment. "That's significantly different from the public narrative." "Yes." "Why stay invisible so long?" Tyson rubbed a thumb slowly against the coffee cup. "Because he loved her," almost came out first. Instead, he answered honestly, "Because I thought the restaurant mattered more than credit." Daniel wrote something down immediately. What changed? Tyson looked back toward the rain-covered windows of Juniper Oak. "I realized invisibility becomes dangerous when someone starts rewriting ownership." That line stayed hanging between them. Daniel leaned forward slightly. "Were you removed from the restaurant during opening night?" "Yes." "Why?" "You'd have to ask Claire Holloway." Daniel watched Tyson carefully, probably expecting anger, bitterness, some explosive quote. Instead, Tyson remained calm. That unsettled people more. "Do you believe she intentionally tried to cut you out?" Tyson took a slow breath before answering. "I believe contracts tell the truth eventually." Daniel stopped writing for a second. Then, "Did you love her?" That question hit harder than legal accusations. Tyson looked down at the table briefly. The waitress refilled coffee nearby while pretending not to listen. Finally, Tyson answered, "Yes." Daniel's voice softened slightly. "Do you still?" Tyson stared out the window again. Juniper Oak looked beautiful even now. That was the tragedy of it. So much work, so much care, so much pride buried beneath manipulation and ego. "I don't know who she is anymore," Tyson said quietly. Daniel switched directions then. "What about the allegations involving financial misconduct?" Tyson immediately straightened emotionally again. That territory felt safer. There are records being reviewed. Did she misuse company money? Tyson chose each word carefully. There are transactions that deserve explanation. Daniel nodded slowly. Not sensationalized. Professional. Good. The interview lasted another 40 minutes. Tyson gave no dramatic speeches, no revenge lines, no insults, only timelines, records, ownership structures, and facts. When Daniel finally switched off the recorder, he studied Tyson silently for several seconds. "You know what's strange?" he said. Tyson looked at him. "You don't sound angry enough." Tyson almost smiled. "My lawyer says anger makes people sloppy." Daniel leaned back against the booth. She's probably right. Outside the cafe, rain finally began slowing. Daniel gathered his notebook carefully. One last question off record. Tyson nodded. "Why didn't you just expose everything immediately after opening night?" Tyson thought about that longer than any other question so far. Then he answered honestly. "Because destroying something you built still feels like destroying part of yourself." Daniel didn't write that one down. Good. Some things sounded better unrecorded. By evening, the interview aired online, not nationally, not even statewide. But enough. The headline spread through Nashville fast. "The man behind Juniper Oak speaks out." Tyson watched it alone from his office at home. Daniel's report was clean, controlled, sharp. Construction footage rolled across the screen, Tyson carrying lumber, reviewing blueprints, supervising electrical work, standing inside the unfinished dining room years earlier. Then came financial records, property ownership filings, permit documentation, lease structures. And finally, the opening night footage. Not sensationalized, just shown plainly. Claire's voice. "He's not part of this anymore." Then Tyson being escorted out. The comments exploded within an hour. People hate betrayal stories when receipts exist, especially involving quiet men who never defended themselves publicly before. Tyson ignored most of it, but Rebecca called almost immediately afterward. Well, she said that shifted quickly. Tyson looked toward the dark lake outside his office windows. How bad for them. Rebecca almost laughed. Very. She began listing consequences already unfolding. 2 investors requested emergency audits. 1 private lender froze expansion discussions. Several vendors demanded updated guarantees, and Juniper Oak's reservation cancellation rate had jumped 32% in 3 hours. Tyson remained silent. Rebecca noticed, "You don't sound happy." Tyson looked again at the interview paused on his laptop screen. His own face stared back calmly beneath headlines and legal summaries. "I didn't want this." "I know, but maybe Claire did." Rebecca replied quietly. That sentence stayed with Tyson after the call ended. Around 9:30 p.m., his phone buzzed again. This time, Marcus Reed. "You should come by tomorrow morning before service." Tyson frowned slightly. Why Marcus replied almost immediately. "Staff meeting. Things are getting ugly." The next morning, Tyson arrived near Juniper Oak before sunrise. The restaurant parking lot sat half empty beneath cold gray skies. Inside, voices echoed sharply through the dining room. Tyson entered quietly through the rear kitchen. Nobody noticed him immediately. Claire stood near the bar, speaking to staff gathered around the dining area. Her voice sounded strained but controlled. Certain people are trying to manipulate public perception. Then one of the servers interrupted. Did Tyson really pay payroll himself? The room went silent. Claire hesitated. Too long. Another employee spoke up. Did he own the building this whole time? Claire's jaw tightened visibly. You don't understand the full business structure. Marcus leaned against the prep counter, silently watching. A hostess folded her arms. So the news report was true. Claire looked exhausted suddenly. Not glamorous anymore, not polished, just cornered. Then Tyson stepped forward from the hallway. Every employee turned instantly. Claire froze. The silence that followed felt heavy enough to crack glass. Tyson looked around slowly at the staff. He recognized nearly all of them. Some he hired personally during construction phases. Others he fed during overnight prep rehearsals before opening. People he had quietly protected without needing credit. One dishwasher spoke first. You really built this place, Tyson answered simply. Yes. No performance. No speech. Just truth. Claire stepped toward him immediately. You shouldn't be here. Tyson looked at her calmly. I own the building. Several employees exchanged shocked looks instantly. Even now, some still hadn't fully believed it. Claire lowered her voice sharply. You're making this worse. Tyson glanced around the room. No, he said quietly. The lies did that already. Nobody moved. Nobody defended Claire either. That silence hurt her more than accusations would have. Marcus finally stepped forward, holding printed payroll summaries in one hand. You want to explain these too? Claire's face lost color immediately. Tyson noticed that before anyone else. And in that exact moment, he understood something dangerous. The employees weren't afraid anymore, which meant control inside Juniper Oak was beginning to collapse from the inside out. The courtroom smelled like old paper coffee and rain-soaked wool coats. Tyson Cox sat quietly beside Rebecca Sloan at the front table inside Davidson County Chancery Court while people filtered into the gallery behind them. No cameras were allowed inside. Still, reporters filled nearly every bench. Juniper Oak had become Nashville's favorite collapse story. Celebrity chef, luxury restaurant, hidden owner, public betrayal. People loved watching beautiful things crack apart. Tyson hated that part of it. Outside the courthouse windows, gray November rain blurred the city skyline, while attorneys organized folders across long wooden tables. Claire Holloway entered at 9:12 a.m. She looked nothing like opening night anymore. No designer white dress, no polished confidence, dark navy suit, hair tied back tightly, minimal makeup. She walked beside Gavin Mercer and two attorneys carrying enough paperwork to fill small suitcases. Claire looked toward Tyson once. He noticed something immediately. Not anger this time. Exhaustion. Gavin still tried performing confidence, but Tyson recognized the strain beneath it now, too. Men like Gavin always looked powerful until paperwork forced specificity. Judges required specificity. That was the problem. At exactly 9:30, Chancellor Elaine Whitmore entered the courtroom. Everyone stood. The hearing began immediately. Rebecca moved first. Clear voice, calm pacing, no dramatic performance. Tyson listened while she built the timeline piece by piece. Property acquisition through Redbriar Holdings, LLC. Construction financing records. Personal guarantees, infrastructure contracts, operational reimbursements, lease agreements. Then came the numbers. Rebecca projected spreadsheets onto courtroom monitors. $742,000 in direct and indirect exposure connected personally to Tyson Cox. The room shifted slightly at that figure. Several reporters started writing faster immediately. Claire's attorneys objected twice during the presentation. Judge Whitmore overruled both. Rebecca continued. Then she displayed the ownership structure diagram. That changed the atmosphere completely, because suddenly the case became visually simple enough for everyone to understand. Juniper Oak Hospitality Group operated the restaurant brand. Redbriar Holdings owned the building itself, controlled solely by Tyson Cox. Judge Whitmore adjusted her glasses slowly while reviewing the documents. Ms. Sloan, she said to clarify. The defendant removed the controlling property owner from commercial premises under active lease, yes, Your Honor. Claire's lead attorney stood immediately. The situation was interpersonal and emotionally charged. Judge Whitmore interrupted without raising her voice. I did not ask about emotions. The courtroom went still. Tyson noticed Claire lower her eyes briefly. Rebecca approached the next issue carefully. The defendants additionally attempted contractual restructuring designed to eliminate Mr. Cox's operational protections while retaining substantial financial exposure tied to his existing guarantees. She handed copies to the court clerk. Judge Whitmore reviewed several highlighted sections silently. Then came the surveillance footage. Tyson watched Claire tense immediately beside her attorneys. The courtroom monitors displayed opening night again. No dramatic music, no editing, just raw security footage. Tyson entering calmly, Claire confronting him, Gavin speaking, security approaching. Then Claire's voice. He's not part of this anymore. The footage stopped there. Judge Whitmore looked toward Claire's legal team. Did your clients dispute the property ownership at the time this occurred? Claire's attorney hesitated. That hesitation lasted too long. No, Your Honor. Another shift moved through the courtroom. Tyson remained completely still beside Rebecca. That mattered. because Claire's attorneys kept waiting for emotional instability from him. They needed him angry. Instead, he looked like a contractor reviewing damage estimates. Rebecca then introduced the financial disclosures. That part hurt Claire visibly. Payroll irregularities, undisclosed expense transfers, vehicle purchases tied to operational accounts, luxury travel expenditures during vendor delinquency periods. Nothing individually catastrophic, together dangerous. Claire finally spoke directly for the first time. I intended to reimburse those expenses. Judge Whitmore looked up. With what funds? Claire opened her mouth, stopped, because there wasn't a good answer. Tyson watched carefully from across the courtroom. He remembered nights Claire sat exhausted on upside-down milk crates inside the unfinished warehouse, talking about honest food and hard work. That woman felt very far away now. Gavin's attorneys tried redirecting the narrative again. They painted Tyson as emotionally possessive, resentful after relationship breakdown, unable to accept Claire's independence and public success. Rebecca let them finish. Then she stood calmly and projected another image onto the courtroom monitors. A permit application, signed by Tyson Cox. Then another. Bank transfer records, insurance liabilities, structural engineering approvals, tax filings, electrical certifications, dozens of documents, all tied directly to Tyson over 5 years. The narrative collapsed quietly after that, not dramatically, structurally, like beams failing underneath too much weight. Judge Whitmore noticed too. She leaned forward slightly. Counsel, she said to Claire's attorneys, your argument continues describing Mr. Cox as an external contractor. Yes, Your Honor. The judge lifted one of the binders slowly. These records describe something significantly more substantial. Nobody answered, because there was nothing left to say. Then came Gavin Mercer's testimony. That lasted less than 20 minutes before problems started appearing. Rebecca walked him carefully through investor communications and ownership discussions. Gavin remained polished initially, until Rebecca displayed internal emails recovered during discovery. One message appeared enlarged on the courtroom monitor, from Gavin Mercer to Claire Holloway. Once Tyson signs the revised structure, Doc's operational control becomes much cleaner. Another, he's emotionally attached to the project. Use that. Tyson saw Claire close her eyes briefly beside her attorneys. Gavin shifted in his chair. Rebecca continued calmly. Mr. Mercer, were you aware Mr. Cox maintained controlling property authority? Throughout these discussions, Gavin adjusted his tie. We believed future restructuring would resolve that. Rebecca stepped closer. That wasn't my question. Gavin hesitated. Yes. The courtroom became silent again, because now intent existed officially in the record, not misunderstanding, not confusion, awareness. Judge Whitmore looked increasingly unimpressed. Then Rebecca introduced the payroll issue. Marcus Reed testified briefly regarding delayed payroll periods and Tyson's emergency financial intervention months before opening. Marcus spoke simply. No embellishment. Staff got paid because Tyson wired money personally. Claire stared at the table during most of his testimony. Tyson noticed her hands trembling slightly for the first time. Not from sadness, from collapse. The version of herself she built publicly was disintegrating under documents and witnesses faster than she could repair it. By late afternoon, the courtroom felt exhausted. Stacks of binders covered nearly every table. Reporters whispered constantly. Even Claire's attorneys looked strained now. Then Judge Whitmore delivered preliminary rulings. The courtroom became completely still. Based on presented evidence, she began, the court recognizes Redbriar Holdings, LLC, under control of Tyson Cox as primary controlling authority regarding the commercial property located at the Juniper Oak premises. Tyson said nothing. Neither did Claire. Judge Whitmore continued. A full financial audit will proceed immediately. Another pause. Additionally, the court finds sufficient concern regarding operational transparency to authorize temporary oversight protections tied to property access and financial review. Claire finally looked up sharply. That ruling mattered enormously because it effectively stripped her ability to operate freely without scrutiny. Judge Whitmore closed the folder before her. One further observation, she said calmly. Everyone waited. This court has little patience for attempts to frame documented financial disputes as emotional instability once records establish otherwise. That sentence landed directly on Claire and Gavin's strategy. Cleanly, publicly, permanently. The hearing adjourned shortly afterward. People rose slowly throughout the courtroom while reporters rushed toward the exits preparing breaking updates. Tyson remained seated a few extra seconds beside Rebecca. "You all right?" she asked quietly. Tyson looked toward Claire across the room. She stood alone briefly while attorneys gathered papers around her. No cameras now, no restaurant lighting, no applause. Just consequences. "I don't know," Tyson admitted. Rebecca nodded once. "That means you're still human." As Tyson finally stood to leave, Claire looked toward him. Their eyes met across the crowded courtroom. 5 years lived inside that silence. Construction dust, late-night meals, dreams, arguments, trust. Then contracts, lies, security guards, court filings. Claire stepped toward him slightly as people moved around them. "Tyson." He stopped. Waited. For a second she looked like she might finally apologize. Instead she asked quietly, "What happens now?" Tyson studied her face carefully, then answered with the same calm voice he used during inspections and construction crises for years. Now the records finished talking, and judging by the fear spreading across Claire's expression afterward, she finally understood they would. Juniper Oak closed 3 days later. Officially, the statement blamed temporary operational restructuring. Nobody believed it. By then, Nashville already knew too much. News vans parked outside the restaurant almost every morning. Food bloggers who once praised Claire Holloway now posted quiet apologies or deleted old videos entirely. Reservation sites filled with canceled bookings and angry speculation. The gold Juniper Oak sign still hung above the entrance, but the building underneath no longer felt alive. It felt abandoned before it was empty. Tyson Cox unlocked the front doors himself the first morning after operations officially paused. The restaurant smelled different without customers. No bourbon, no perfume, no expensive candles burning near the hostess stand, only stale air, industrial cleaning chemicals, and cold kitchen steel. Sunlight pushed through tall front windows across silent oak floors Tyson installed years earlier with his own crew. He stood there alone for several seconds. 5 years of work, and this was what remained. Behind him, Rebecca Sloan entered carrying updated audit folders beneath one arm. "The financial review got worse overnight," she said quietly. Tyson didn't answer immediately. His eyes moved slowly around the dining room instead. Every chair aligned perfectly, wine glasses polished and untouched, jazz speakers silent, a restaurant frozen halfway between success and collapse. Rebecca noticed his expression. "You all right?" Tyson rubbed a hand across the back of his neck. "I keep thinking I should feel victorious. And I don't." Rebecca nodded once. "Good." Tyson looked at her. "That surprises you?" "No," she replied. "It means you cared about what this place was supposed to be." They walked deeper into the restaurant together. The audit teams had already begun inventory review in the back office. 2 accountants sat surrounded by receipts, vendor files, and banking summaries while typing quietly into laptops. Marcus Reed stood near the kitchen entrance organizing dry storage inventory. He gave Tyson a respectful nod. "Morning." Tyson nodded back. How bad Marcus looked around carefully before answering. Worse than staff thought. That seemed to be the theme lately. Everything inside Juniper Oak looked worse once examined closely. Tyson moved into the kitchen slowly. The stainless steel counters reflected pale morning light while refrigeration systems hummed softly overhead. He remembered installing those systems personally after the original subcontractor disappeared mid-project. Every corner of the kitchen carried memories now. Long nights, burned hands, emergency repairs. Claire laughing beside prep tables while testing sauces during construction. That memory hit harder than Tyson expected. Not because he missed her exactly, because he missed believing in her. Marcus opened one of the inventory binders. "Several suppliers never got full payment," he said quietly. Tyson frowned slightly. How many? Marcus handed him a printed list. Tyson scanned the numbers silently. Meat distributors, wine vendors, specialty equipment rentals, even linen services. Thousands upon thousands still owed. Rebecca stepped beside him. The audit team also found unreported investor advances. Tyson looked up. How much close to 400 grand? Tyson stared at her. Where'd it go? Rebecca's expression answered before words did. Everywhere. Luxury branding consultants, travel expenses, vehicle leases, marketing contracts, lifestyle maintenance. Tyson closed the binder slowly. Juniper Oak hadn't collapsed because of one betrayal. It collapsed because Claire started feeding the image more than the business. Around noon, Tyson entered the rear office for the first time since opening week. The room looked chaotic now. Half-packed boxes covered the floor. Legal notices sat stacked beside unopened wine invoices. Sticky notes clung to computer monitors with scribbled reminders about overdue transfers and emergency calls. The illusion of control had evaporated fast. Tyson noticed something framed beside the desk. A magazine feature from months earlier. Claire Holloway, The Future of Southern Dining. He stared at it silently, then turned the frame face down on the desk. Not angrily, just finished with it. One of the accountants approached holding additional paperwork. Mr. Cox Tyson looked over. We found bonus discrepancies tied to management accounts, meaning staff bonuses were promised publicly but partially withheld operationally. Marcus cursed quietly from the doorway. Tyson remained calm externally. Inside, something hardened further, because kitchen staff had worked brutal hours believing Juniper Oak would eventually stabilize. And while they worked, Claire spent money protecting appearances. Tyson looked toward Marcus. How many employees are still unpaid? Marcus checked a spreadsheet. 14 with partial bonus balances. 3 overtime disputes. Tyson nodded once. Pay them. The accountant blinked. From which account? Tyson looked around the silent office. Mine for now. Rebecca turned immediately. Tyson. They worked, he interrupted quietly. They get paid. Marcus stared at him for a second. You serious? Yes. Marcus looked away briefly, almost embarrassed by relief. People are going to remember that. Tyson answered honestly. That's not why I'm doing it. And it wasn't. Construction taught Tyson something years ago. When buildings collapse, workers usually suffer first while executives argue later. He refused to let that happen here. By late afternoon, most of the remaining staff had gathered quietly inside the dining room while auditors continued reviewing records. Nobody knew what happened next. Not really. One server asked Tyson directly, "So is the restaurant dead?" Tyson looked around the room, at frightened employees, at the polished dining space they once felt proud to work inside, at the dream everyone bought into. I don't know yet, he answered honestly. That answer earned more respect than false optimism would have. Around 4:30 p.m., Claire arrived unexpectedly. The entire restaurant changed the second she walked inside. Silence spread instantly. Claire noticed it too. No greetings, no warm smiles, no admiration, only distance. She wore sunglasses despite the cloudy weather outside. Her shoulders looked tense beneath a dark coat. Tyson stood near the bar reviewing vendor summaries when she approached. Can we talk privately? Tyson studied her face carefully. The arrogance from opening night was gone now. What remained looked brittle. He nodded toward the office. Inside, Claire removed the sunglasses slowly. Her eyes looked exhausted, red around the edges. She glanced around the room nervously. You let auditors tear this place apart. Tyson remained standing. They're reviewing records. You know what I mean? Tyson waited. Claire folded her arms tightly. People look at me like I'm a criminal now. Tyson answered calmly. You lied to a lot of people. Claire's jaw tightened. I built this restaurant too. Yes. That matters. It did. Claire stared at him. What's that supposed to mean? Tyson looked toward the dining room beyond the office glass. You stopped building the restaurant eventually. Claire laughed bitterly. Here we go. You started building the story instead. That landed harder than Tyson intended. Claire looked away first. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Claire asked quietly, What happens to Juniper Oak now? Tyson considered the question honestly, because he still didn't fully know. The easiest option was selling the property entirely. Walk away. Recover losses. End the nightmare. But every time he imagined bulldozing the dream completely, something resisted inside him. Not because of Claire, because of the work. The building deserved better than becoming another failed luxury shell in Nashville. Tyson finally answered, "I haven't decided yet." Claire looked back toward him carefully. "You'd really reopen without me?" That question revealed everything. Even now, she still thought the restaurant's value came primarily from her. Tyson walked toward the office doorway slowly, then looked back once. "This place survived because dozens of people worked for it," he said quietly. "Not because one person took pictures inside it." Claire flinched slightly. Not dramatically, but enough. Tyson left the office afterward and walked through the dining room toward the entrance. Outside, evening settled slowly over Germantown while rainwater reflected city lights across empty streets. Before leaving, Tyson stopped beneath the glowing juniper oak sign mounted above the hostess stand. He stared at it a long moment, then grabbed a ladder from the storage room himself. Marcus appeared nearby. "You need help?" Tyson shook his head once. "No." Carefully, silently, Tyson removed the sign from the wall bolt by bolt. The gold lettering felt heavier than he expected. When the final anchor came loose, he lowered the sign slowly into his hands. Juniper oak. 5 years reduced to metal and screws. Tyson carried it toward the back storage room without speaking, and behind him the restaurant looked strangely honest for the first time since opening night. 6 months later, the building smelled like fresh bread again. Not luxury candles, not imported perfume. Real food. Butter melting on hot cast iron, smoked brisket resting beneath butcher paper, roasted garlic drifting through warm kitchen air before sunrise. Tyson Cox stood alone inside the dining room at 5:43 a.m., tightening the final bolt beneath a wooden booth seat. Outside, early winter fog rolled slowly through Germantown while delivery trucks moved across quiet Nashville streets. The building looked different now, cleaner, simpler, honest. The marble bar Claire insisted on importing had been replaced with reclaimed Tennessee oak. Half the gold fixtures were gone. Tyson removed the oversized decorative mirrors entirely and exposed the original brick walls again. The restaurant finally looked like the building wanted to look, not like someone trying to impress investors. Above the entrance hung a new sign, Cox and Pine. No dramatic launch campaign, no influencers, no velvet ropes. Just dark green lettering mounted carefully into brick. Tyson repaired himself years earlier. Marcus Reed pushed through the kitchen doors carrying produce crates. "You're here too early again," he muttered. Tyson slid off the booth and grabbed a wrench from the floor. "Could say the same thing about you." Marcus smirked faintly. That was about as emotional as Marcus ever got. The kitchen lights flickered on behind them while early prep cooks began arriving one by one. No chaos. No screaming executive chefs, no PR photographers staging fake candid moments for social media. Just work. That was intentional. After Juniper Oak collapsed publicly, Tyson disappeared for nearly 2 months. No interviews, no podcasts, no television appearances. He refused every request. Even Daniel Hayes eventually stopped calling. People online invented stories anyway. Some claimed Tyson planned the entire downfall strategically from the beginning. Others painted Claire as a complete villain. Neither version felt true. Reality was usually less cinematic and more disappointing than people preferred. Tyson spent those months quietly rebuilding the business structure instead. Not the image, the structure, vendor relationships, payroll systems, supplier trust, kitchen operations. One problem at a time. That was how buildings survived collapse. The biggest surprise came from the staff. Most of them stayed. Marcus stayed first, then 2 line cooks, then 3 servers. Eventually, Maddie Brooks returned too. Maddie had been Juniper Oak's original sous chef before Claire pushed the restaurant toward luxury branding over food consistency. 36 years old, sharp instincts, no patience for nonsense. She walked back into the building one morning carrying a notebook and asked Tyson one question. "You reopening this place honestly?" Tyson answered. "That's the only version worth doing now." Maddie nodded once. "Good." Then she tied on an apron and started redesigning the menu. Now, 6 months later, Cox and Pine prepared for opening night. A real opening night this time. Tyson walked slowly through the dining room, checking details while staff moved quietly around him. The tables were plain walnut now instead of polished marble. The lighting stayed warm but softer. No staged floral walls for Instagram photos. No oversized whiskey displays pretending sophistication. The restaurant finally felt lived in instead of performed. Marcus approached holding a clipboard. Reservation list full. Tyson nodded once. How far out? 3 weeks. That surprised him slightly, not because of ego, because he genuinely expected people to stay away after the public disaster attached to the building. Instead, Nashville became curious. People trusted quiet rebuilding more than flashy promises now. At 7:10 a.m., Tyson stepped outside into the cold air behind the restaurant. His old gray Ford truck remained parked in the alley exactly where it always had. Same scratches, same faded paint, same cracked dashboard. A young dishwasher walked past carrying trash bags and paused beside the truck. That really yours? Tyson glanced over. Unfortunately, the kid laughed. I thought owners drove Range Rovers around here. Tyson looked toward the building. That's usually a bad sign. By late afternoon, customers had already started lining up outside despite reservations only. Not celebrities, not influencers, local people. Construction workers still wearing work boots. Nurses finishing hospital shifts, couples from East Nashville, older regulars from neighborhood diners. The kind of people Claire slowly stopped designing for years earlier. Tyson stood near the kitchen pass while Maddie inspected final plating. You nervous? She asked. Tyson considered it honestly. A little. Maddie nodded toward the dining room. That's good. Why means you still care. At 5:55 p.m., the front doors opened. No champagne tower, no photographers shouting names, no red carpet, just warm light spilling onto the sidewalk while the first guest stepped inside. Tyson stayed near the back initially. That habit never left him. He preferred watching operations instead of participating in them. The restaurant moved smoothly almost immediately. Servers laughed naturally instead of reciting rehearsed luxury descriptions. The kitchen communicated clearly without panic. Music stayed low enough for actual conversations. People looked comfortable. That mattered more to Tyson than reviews ever would. An older couple seated near the front windows flagged him down around 7:20 p.m. The man studied Tyson carefully. You're the guy from the news. Tyson stopped beside the table. Sometimes. The older man smiled slightly. You built this place twice, didn't you? Tyson looked around the dining room slowly, then answered honestly. Feels that way. The man gestured toward the food arriving at nearby tables. Looks better this time. Tyson almost smiled. Yeah, he said quietly. I think it is. Later that evening, Daniel Hayes arrived unexpectedly. No camera crew, no microphone, just a winter coat and notebook tucked beneath one arm. Tyson noticed him immediately near the hostess stand. Daniel approached carefully. You serving reporters now? Tyson glanced toward the full dining room. If they pay. Daniel laughed once, then looked around the restaurant thoughtfully. This place feels different. It is. Daniel nodded toward the exposed brick walls. More honest. That word again. Honest. Tyson realized how much he missed environments where nobody needed performance to survive. Daniel lowered his voice slightly. People still ask about Claire. Tyson wiped his hands slowly with a kitchen towel. What do you tell them, that she's dealing with the legal fallout? Tyson nodded once. Claire's civil cases continued quietly now. Gavin Mercer disappeared almost entirely from Nashville after several financial disclosures surfaced publicly during the audit process. Neither mattered much to Tyson anymore. The anger had burned itself out months earlier. What remained was fatigue and eventually peace. Daniel studied him carefully. You really don't want revenge, do you? Tyson looked around the restaurant. Maddie shouting timing adjustments near the kitchen pass. Marcus carrying brisket trays through the dining room. Customers laughing beneath warm light. Staff moving like a team instead of employees protecting a brand. Then Tyson answered, No. Daniel seemed surprised. Tyson shrugged slightly. Revenge would have been tearing the building down. The reporter wrote that one down immediately. Around 10:40 p.m., the dinner rush finally slowed. Tyson stepped outside briefly through the rear alley door for fresh air. Cold wind moved between the buildings while downtown Nashville glowed in the distance. Behind him, Cox and Pine buzzed softly with conversation and dishes clinking beneath warm light. Tyson leaned against the brick wall beside his old truck. For a moment, he simply listened. No lawyers, no cameras, no accusations. Just a functioning restaurant finally built on truth instead of image. The back door opened behind him. Marcus stepped out carrying 2 coffees. He handed one to Tyson. You know, Marcus said staff still talks about opening night sometimes. Tyson stared into the steam rising from the cup. Yeah, mostly about how calm you stayed. Tyson gave a tired half smile. Didn't feel calm. Marcus leaned beside him against the wall. Maybe not, but you stayed standing. Inside the restaurant, laughter echoed faintly through the alley. Tyson looked toward the glowing back windows of Cox and Pine, then toward the old Ford truck parked beside the loading dock, where all of this really began years earlier. For the first time in a very long while, the building finally felt like home again. By spring, people stopped calling it the restaurant scandal. Now they just called it Cox and Pine. That change happened quietly. No dramatic redemption article. No public apology tour. No viral comeback campaign. Just consistency. Every morning at 5:30 a.m., Tyson Cox unlocked the back door himself. Every afternoon, the smokers outside released slow ribbons of oak and hickory into the Nashville air. Every evening, the dining room filled with customers who returned because the food stayed good and the atmosphere never pretended to be something it wasn't. Over time, that became enough. The legal fallout continued in the background for months. Claire Holloway settled multiple civil claims tied to operational misrepresentation and financial disclosures. Several investors withdrew permanently from projects connected to her name. Gavin Mercer disappeared almost entirely from Tennessee hospitality circles after additional audit reviews surfaced involving unrelated ventures in Atlanta. Tyson followed almost none of it. Rebecca Sloan updated him when necessary. That was all. One afternoon, she walked into Cox and Pine carrying a thin legal folder instead of the massive binders that once followed her everywhere. Final settlement confirmations, she said. Tyson stood behind the bar repairing a loose cabinet hinge. Everything done. Mostly. Rebecca placed the folder on the counter. Redbriar Holdings retains full uncontested ownership. Remaining liabilities resolved. Operational disputes closed. Tyson nodded once. No celebration, no relief speech. Just the quiet end of something exhausting. Rebecca watched him tighten the hinge another few seconds. You know, she said most people would have burned this place down emotionally. Tyson wiped his hands with a towel. I thought about selling, but you didn't. Tyson looked around the restaurant. Lunch service hadn't started yet. Sunlight crossed the exposed brick walls while prep cooks moved quietly in the kitchen. Someone laughed near dry storage. Coffee brewed somewhere behind the bar. It wasn't the building's fault, he said. Rebecca smiled faintly. That might be the most contractor answer I've ever heard. Before leaving, she paused near the entrance. One more thing. Tyson looked up. Daniel Hayes is releasing a follow-up piece tonight. Tyson sighed softly. I thought he was done with me. Rebecca shrugged. Apparently not. That evening, the article appeared online. The Man Behind the Walls. Tyson read it alone after closing time while sitting at the corner booth nearest the kitchen. The article surprised him. Daniel barely mentioned the lawsuits, barely mentioned Claire. Instead, the story focused on construction photos, early renovation footage, staff interviews, quiet details. Tyson sleeping in his truck during winter repairs, paying kitchen payroll personally, fixing refrigeration systems at 2 a.m. before opening week. One line stayed with him longer than the others. Some men build loudly for recognition. Others build quietly because they believe things should stand. Tyson closed the laptop after reading that sentence. Outside rain tapped softly against the restaurant windows again. Nashville seemed to rain during every major moment of his life lately. The kitchen lights dimmed as staff finished cleanup. Marcus walked out carrying inventory sheets. You heading home? In a minute. Marcus leaned against the booth. You read the article, Tyson nodded. What'd you think? Tyson considered the question honestly. Too dramatic. Marcus laughed. Yeah, but mostly true. Maybe. The strange thing was Tyson still didn't feel like a hero. Heroes usually won something. Tyson lost 5 years, nearly $1 million, and the woman he once thought he would marry. What he gained was harder to explain. Perspective, maybe. Or peace. Around midnight, Tyson finally walked through the empty restaurant alone. That had become a habit. After service ended and the noise disappeared, he liked checking things personally: booth alignment, kitchen temperatures, floor condition, light fixtures. The building relaxed differently when empty. Honest again. Tyson paused near the front entrance where Juniper Oak's gold sign once hung months earlier. Now only Cox and Pine remained. Simple dark lettering. Nothing flashy. He remembered opening night suddenly with painful clarity. Champagne glasses. Security hands gripping his arm. Claire standing beneath warm light saying, "He's not part of this anymore." At the time that sentence felt like destruction. Now it felt strangely distant. Because Tyson finally understood something important. Claire didn't remove him from his life that night. She removed herself from the truth. And eventually, truth always became expensive. Tyson switched off several dining room lights before moving toward the back office. Inside, things looked completely different now. No hidden invoices, no panic, no fake luxury branding mood boards, just organized shelves, payroll folders, maintenance schedules, and operational spreadsheets. Simple things. Stable things. He opened the bottom desk drawer and found the old framed architectural rendering of Juniper Oak still stored beneath paperwork. "Couldn't have done this without you." Claire's handwriting stared back at him beneath the faded rendering. Tyson looked at it quietly for a long moment. Then he placed the frame back inside the drawer and closed it gently. Not because he hated her, because some memories belonged closed. The next morning arrived cold and clear. Tyson parked his old Ford truck behind the restaurant before sunrise as usual. Frost covered parts of the alley while the city slowly woke around Germantown. Inside, Maddie Brooks already stood in the kitchen rolling biscuit dough. "You're late," she called without looking up. Tyson checked his watch. "It's 5:32. "Exactly." That made him smile slightly. One by one, the staff arrived. Marcus. Line cooks, servers, dishwashers, normal rhythms, normal conversations. Nobody talked about lawsuits anymore, or Claire, or opening night. Life eventually moved toward whatever stayed standing. By 7 a.m., the first customers had already started gathering outside despite breakfast service beginning at 8. Tyson carried produce boxes through the kitchen while staff prepared for another full day. An older woman seated at the counter near the open kitchen watched him for several minutes before speaking. "You own this place." Tyson nodded once. The woman smiled warmly. "You can tell." Tyson paused slightly. "How?" She gestured around the restaurant. "Because you still work in it." That sentence followed Tyson the rest of the morning, because maybe that was the difference in the end. Claire wanted ownership to elevate her. Tyson wanted ownership to protect what he built. One consumed people, the other grounded them. Later that afternoon, Tyson stepped outside through the rear alley door during a quiet moment between lunch and dinner service. The same old Ford truck sat parked beside the building under soft Tennessee sunlight. The same truck people once looked at and assumed weakness. Tyson leaned against the brick wall and listened to the sounds inside Cox and Pine dishes, clinking kitchen laughter music humming softly through speakers, employees calling orders calmly. A functioning place. An honest place. No performance necessary. For a long moment, Tyson simply stood there breathing cold spring air while sunlight reflected off the alley pavement. No anger left, no need for revenge, only the strange calm that came after surviving something heavy without letting it poison you completely. Inside the restaurant, someone called his name from the kitchen. Tyson pushed himself off the wall and headed back toward the door. And behind him, the old truck remained parked exactly where it had always been, right where everything started. After years of building something with your own hands, the hardest part isn't losing money. It's realizing the person beside you stopped valuing the truth long before the collapse happened. Tyson survived because he stayed patient when emotions could have ruined him. He kept records. He stayed calm. He let facts speak when accusations got loud. A lot of people know what it feels like to be underestimated because they look ordinary. Quiet people get ignored every day. People assume calm means weak. They assume simple clothes mean small value. But real character usually reveals itself under pressure, not attention. So now I want to ask you something. Honestly, have you ever helped build something, a business, a relationship, a family, a dream, only to feel pushed aside once success arrived? If you have, share your story in the comments. A lot more people understand that feeling than you think. And if you enjoy stories about quiet strength, betrayal, patience, and people who refuse to break under pressure, subscribe to the channel. Tomorrow's story might stay with you even longer than this one.